Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1123 of the War News stream. And today we have very big news that Ukraine is still advancing into Russia's Belgorod region. Also, the Iranian proxies messed up today and struck Saudi Arabia with a missile. And Poland is now deploying over 11,000 troops to the Belarus border amidst a big escalation. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to hear that the United States Armed Forces have continued a significant air and ground campaign against the Yemeni Houthis within the area of western Yemen. We have also been able to hear in a major piece of news that the Saudi Arabians today have actually been hit through a Houthi attack by Houthi missiles fired into the area of southern Saudi Arabia, and we've already been able to see that the Saudi Arabians have returned fire, the Saudi Air Force targeting and destroying Houthi armed groups of combatants near to the Saudi Arabian Yemeni border within that area. Meanwhile, the USS Carl Vinson is still underway from the Western Pacific inbound for the area of the Middle East, where it will be joining the Harry S. Truman and U.S. air campaigns against the Houthis at this time. We have not only been able to hear that, but up in the other direction of the Middle East, near to its western side, bordering the Mediterranean, we've been able to hear that the Israeli armed forces have had an incredibly busy day today as well, as the Israeli armed forces are now crushing the Iranian proxy forces within southern Lebanon and in the Gaza Strip, as we have been able to hear that airstrikes in both directions have proven to create successful results, with a major shocking update being reported from the Gaza Strip only minutes before the stream went live, as the leader of the Hamas political agency has been killed in an airstrike inside the Gaza Strip only moments ago. We have also been able to hear outside the Middle East that the Polish Republic is once again preparing for war, as we have been able to hear that 11,000 Polish armed forces have been mobilized and moved to the Belarusian and Kaliningrad borders, bordering the Russian Federation and the Republic of Belarus. This appears to be, once again, another preparation by the Polish Republic for a possible confrontation or full-on conventional war with the Russian Federation here within the very near future. Meanwhile, Ukrainian armed forces have continued to conduct drone attacks against the Russian Federation tonight. As we have been able to hear, the Ukrainian drones are currently inside the Russian Federation and still currently conducting this attack. We do not have any damage assessments or videos of explosions from the ground, but we do know that Ukrainian drones are airborne over the skies of Russia at this very moment, and we are trying to wait and see if we get any news or information while we are live about where these drones targeted and what exactly did they hit. Meanwhile, inside of Ukraine, we have been able to hear that the Russian Federation's armed forces have continued to have an incredibly difficult time today against the Ukrainian defenders and offensive forces throughout the front lines inside of Ukraine and also inside of Belgorod. While we have gotten no actual frontline updates from the situation in Belgorod, we can confirm that the Ukrainian armed forces have made a significant foothold in the area, and it does appear that they are still conducting offensive plans or executing offensive planning at this point. We have also been able to hear inside the area of the Sucha region that the Ukrainian armed forces don't appear to be completely down and out just yet within that area, as we've still seen quite significant levels of attacks and also defensive efforts by the Ukrainians being conducted inside of Kursk. Meanwhile, Ukrainian armed forces are holding the Russians back along all front lines and are continuing to push the Russian Federation back in the city of Toretsk, and also continuing to take actions against the Russian Federation near to the outskirts of the city of Pokrovsk. Today was a fairly busy day as far as news went. I would have to say that it isn't one of the craziest days in terms of the overwhelming number of news items that happen. We have about 26 or 27 news articles today. It is a fairly significant number, but over the past few days, we've actually been battling with about 55 individual events occurring per day around the world that we have to try and fit into a 2-hour segment. So tonight we can
Really today it seems like we just have a couple of really big whoppers tonight, like a lot less than we usually have, but just massive stories for the ones that we actually do have.
And I would agree, it's not a massive amount of loads of different stories. It's really just a smaller amount of incredibly large stories. And so tonight we actually have a bit of an opportunity to delve in deeper, at least into every single piece of what's going on in Ukraine and the Middle East currently, and talk a lot more about it, at least with the information that we have right now. But moving on into the large news that we've been able to hear, we are going to be moving on down into the Middle East today, as we have been able to hear that US-Israeli operations against Iranian proxy forces, or largely anti-Iranian coalition forces, have been operating with great efficiency today against the Iranian proxies, and have been able to render a great deal of damage once again to these proxy forces that are operating on the behalf of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Moving most importantly into Western Yemen, we have been able to hear that the U.S. air campaign within the area has been a major success today. We have been able to hear that U.S. armed forces have been conducting strikes around the area of Al-Hadida, and we were able to get a little bit of footage from Al-Hadida showing us some of the U.S. airstrikes and their successful impacts within the area of the port itself, which we'll be watching right here. And we see the explosions in the distance.
We got the sound effects to boot.
Man, he's really throwing in the whole gamut, and we're getting it for free. And we now hear the explosions in the distance from the port. We can also see the flash of the fires that are now breaking out the port as well. We were hearing someone yell something about George Bush. I don't know why, because he's not even really around anymore. But
their info's a little outdated, I think.
Dude, there's still the situation in Yemen has been going on so long, and they've been cut out from the outside world for so long. They still think George Bush is president, man. They're like, he's coming for us. He moved from Iraq. He's coming down here. Like, it's like, no, it's a totally different guy. I swear. Like, a lot of them have come and gone. But we can see
Bush left such an impression that they've never forgotten about him, apparently.
Dude, that guy said, "Oh my God, it is Bush! Oh God, it is Bush!" It's like, bro, it's not Bush. It's like that was like 20 years ago, dude. It's over. But we can see some sort of a bright fire emanating from the port. We can see that the smoke is illuminated by some sort of a brightness below, which is telling us that there is an ongoing fire at the port of Al-Hadida. The port of Al-Hadida is the most significant port that is actually controlled by the Yemeni Houthis at this time, and we do understand that it is the larger basing area that the Yemeni Houthis have used throughout the entirety of the conflict that's been going on for over a year and a half. Largely acts of piracy is really what they should be called, not really an active conflict, but most of it has been based out of Al-Hodeida. From what we understand, U.S. airstrikes are most likely targeting the port of Al-Hodeida near to the northwestern side of the city, as they are continuing to knock out more important components that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has facilitated the Houthis with to be able to conduct their acts of piracy on the high seas, or largely in the southern area of the Red Sea. These acts of piracy have produced a significant amount of damage over the past year and a half. Some vessels have been damaged by air or naval drone attacks. Other vessels have actually been sunk within the region, and some crew members of some of these vessels have been killed, and dozens more have been taken hostage at various different times over about the last year and a half. It is something significant to see that U.S. airstrikes are continuing to target this area, as we are understanding that this will be a direct correlation in the decrease in acts of piracy being conducted by the Houthis against global shipping interests that are traveling through the southern Red Sea or in the western area of the Gulf of Aden. We also were able to hear at the exact same time that another little interesting thing was happening within northern Yemeni Houthi-controlled territory. But before we get to that, I did want to show you this clip. This was actually a very cool one. This was a little bit of footage that was released by the U.S. Department of Defense, or specifically U.S. Central Command, which is in charge of this area of the world, and we were able to see something kind of neat. Check it out. It's an F-18 launch.
Look at that.
Oh, and look, we can see them sending up the Greyhound as well. I mean, you see another F-18 going on its way.
How come some of them are taking off with full afterburner and some aren't?
That's an interesting question. I really don't know. I actually would not know the answer to that one.
I guess some guys are just full send and some aren't.
You know what? No. Actually, I think I may have the answer to that. Let me check this one that actually had the afterburners on. Let's see here. Oh, I see why. Notice this. This one, lots and lots of external drop tanks for extended range. So it's a lot heavier. So they're having to give it afterburner to make sure that it has enough thrust that once it escapes the catapult, it has enough thrust to actually be able to get airborne, because this one is so heavily laden with fuel. The other ones in the clip appear to have possibly had drop tank on the center line, but no other drop tank, so they didn't require an afterburner to be able to leave the deck. The other one, though, was probably so heavy it had to have an afterburner. But one little thing that they didn't show us here, or at least the launch of, they only showed a brief second of it, is the E-2C Greyhound. And let me go get the E-2C Greyhound, and let me go grab that really quickly. The C2 Greyhound, sorry, correction there. But we want the electronic one, so we want the E2C Greyhound. Let me see if I can go find that one. Oh man, where in the world is it? Oh my lord, I gotta go try and find this thing right now. Let me just put in the Greyhound AWACS. That ought to get it for us. The E2 Hawkeye. There we go. I just mixed them both up together. Sorry about that. But this is the E2 Hawkeye. What is very interesting about the Hawkeye, and this was a little bit of an underplayed part of this clip right here, is that the E2 Hawkeye provides a very important part of carrier functions that a lot of people wouldn't know about. Interestingly enough, when you think of combat air operations of an aircraft carrier like a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, many people would believe that a lot of those air operations are being conducted from the actual conning tower or the bridge of the aircraft carrier itself, and they're the ones largely telling the aircraft what to do, where to go, and everything else in between. That actually largely is not the case. The on-field battlefield operator of air operations largely is the E-2 Hawkeyes of the aircraft carrier itself. These are always launched pretty much entirely whenever any aircraft go airborne. Not only does the AWACS provide crucial information and a major, massive, all-seeing eye inside of the skies that allows for the U.S. Navy to see if there are any surface-to-air or anti-ship missiles being fired, but this aircraft also serves as a flying command headquarters for all air operations to be coordinated pretty much by a flying JTAC operator inside of the plane. This is really where the magic happens of most of the air operations that are currently going on right now inside of Yemen are from these E-2 Hawkeyes. Not only that, another interesting thing about the Hawkeyes to share with you all is that the Hawkeyes usually provide, at least in most combat operations, the greater deal of visibility to incoming threats and targets than the aircraft carriers or surrounding destroyers and cruisers do themselves. While destroyers, cruisers, and aircraft carriers are outfitted with a wide variety of sensors, radars, and arrays, these actually pretty much transmit the location of these vessels if they are turned on in an active form. Usually, vessels prefer in a combat scenario to use some form of a passive detection system on board and deploy some sort of a helicopter or an aircraft, if you're an aircraft carrier, that can turn on its own active sensors and radars, so that way if anything is going to be targeting something, it's going to target this little plane instead of the giant aircraft carrier that's worth about $8 billion. So that largely is also another important thing about these Hawkeyes as well, and you just never really hear them being mentioned much outside of really niche spheres about how important these kind of aircraft are to naval air operations, or really the operations of carrier strike groups as a whole. But these things are pretty much the absolute crux of any actual operations that an aircraft carrier strike group conducts. So pretty impressive to see that they included one in this clip. A little bit sad that they didn't show the launch of it. I would have personally liked to have seen this thing launch, but still, we did get to see the other F-18s being launched, and that was pretty cool in itself. Oddly enough, though, one thing I do have to say is that all of these F-18s appear to be equipped fairly light, like, or at least all the ones that we saw in this clip. This F-18 appears to have one external drop tank attached to the center line, and then two AIM-9Xs equipped onto its external pylons, and that is it. It doesn't appear, at least from what I can see, and it is fairly dark, that they have any AIM-120s mounted onto this FA-18 or FA-18 Super Hornet. So it appears that this F-18 Hornet is conducting some sort of an air defense operation, most likely for the fleet itself that is operating, instead of any kind of an air defense operation that would be occurring inside of Houthi-controlled airspace. So a little bit interesting with that. Let's check out the loadout of the other aircraft involved. This one appears to be carrying, we went over this a night ago. I think it was the AGM-154, if I'm remembering correctly, or something similar to that. It is it's the Joint Standoff Weapon. Those are the JSOWs, the glide bombs, pretty much. This one is most likely one of the Super Hornets that's going to be conducting the air-to-ground operations. We can also see that it is equipped with a external drop tank on the center line as well. And we see that one taking off.
I think the forces have pretty much been using the glide bombs exclusively to strike the Houthis, because I really haven't heard of any other munitions really being used.
I haven't really seen any other munitions being used either, at least in all the footage that we've seen so far. So I think it really does suggest that at this point, the only ordnance that's being used are joint standoff weapons. That's it. It's a little interesting that that is the case, because they could have easily equipped these FA-18s with JDAMs or any other kind of a normal or more conventional laser-guided bomb, which would have much less range, but it is showing, at least in the kind of weapons loadouts that they're providing these aircraft, that there may be some sort of a concern that Houthi surface-to-air missile batteries may be a little bit more potent than expected, and so they're wanting these aircraft to be able to drop their ordnance at a much farther range, so that way they have more of a buffer zone in between them and possible air defense on the ground. So a little bit interesting to see that. We also see this one being launched, and it appears that it has some sort of equipment loaded onto one of its external pylons. This also, once again, looks like some sort of an air-to-ground loadout on this aircraft. Cannot tell exactly what kind of weapons those are, because if they are weapons, it's incredibly small. It doesn't appear to be any kind of a guidance pod either, so unfortunately I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly what's on that Hornet, but that one takes off. And then I think in the last part of the clip right here, we didn't really get a good look at that one at all. And it really looked like it had almost nothing on it. It was incredibly lean. One more thing, though. One more thing I do want to point out is that this aircraft right here, it doesn't appear that it is loaded out with any weaponry at all. It has nothing but drop tanks. And let me double check. Yeah, those are certainly drop tanks. It's loaded up with nothing but drop tanks, I think. Let me go check this. Let's see. Let me make sure that I'm getting this right. And it looks like I'm largely getting this right. This appears to be the EA-18G Growler, which is the electronic warfare variant of the F-18. It appears to... Well, actually, let's check those external pylons there. And... Nope, I might be wrong, because it doesn't appear to have the additional booms that we see on the external areas of the wings on this EA-18G Prowler, or Growler, as it's called. It doesn't appear to have those. So this may not actually be an electronic warfare version of the Hornet, but it does appear to be loaded out with an insane number of drop tanks.
Yeah, I see people in the live chat saying maybe it's a tanker, maybe it's for refueling. So maybe that's the case.
Let me see if I can go pull that up, because there are, like, the F-18, I have to be honest with y'all, I don't know an incredibly large deal about the F-18 beyond its major variants, so I think that there may be an in-air refueling F-18. Let me go check that. Aerial refueling F-18. Let me go check that, and let's see here. So, yes, it does appear that that would be an aerial refueling F-18. Let me go get a picture of it for y'all, just that way I can show that, and that way we can make doubly sure. That appears to be the exact loadout that would be used for an in-air refueling operation for an F-18. We can see the exact same kind of loadout on this F-18 in the picture. So that looks to be an aircraft that's being used as an in-air refueler, so that way the Navy can extend the operational availability of their aircraft, either conducting air defense for the fleet or strike operations on Western Yemen itself. So that pretty much is a general breakdown of at least the aircraft that we saw involved in the operation. It certainly wasn't a quick and easy operation due to the amount of different kinds of aircraft involved. This did involve a decent amount of planning, at least for in-air refueling, the AWACS being airborne, which is pretty much a standard. Also the fact that they had air defense and ground attack F-18s airborne as well. It does appear that this is pretty much the entire complement of aircraft that may have been launched overnight in this one clip alone, being launched from the deck of the USS Harry S. Truman to be able to conduct these strikes inside of Western Yemen. But moving on from that, we also have heard of another interesting thing as well, before we wrap up the Houthi side of the story and move on up into the western area of the Middle East, and then start talking about the Israeli side of the story today. But we were able to hear in a bit of shocking news, for one of the first times we've heard of this in quite some time, that the Saudi Arabians have actually been directly attacked by the Yemeni Houthis and have been stricken by a missile of some kind. We do not know exactly where it landed, but it does appear at this point that the Yemeni Houthis are now extending their strikes to Saudi Arabia as well. And we actually have a question here very soon. We're going to add in the Saudi Arabians here in a minute to this, about what's going on in Western Yemen, or Houthi-controlled Yemen. But we were also able to see that the Saudi Air Force has continued their air operations against the Yemeni Houthis, and we can see here a large column of Houthi fighters near to the Saudi Arabian-Yemeni border, soon to be taken out by the Saudi Arabian Air Force. We can see them moving into some kind of a compound here, and in just a moment, they will disappear in a flash. Kind of like deadbeat dads when alimony comes around. But we can see here that the bomb's coming down, and any second, and there we go. And the facility's gone. Man, some people say...
A very big hit, indeed. It just like blackened out the whole screen.
Man, the Saudi Arabians said, you heard of the line, now hear of the crater. But nevertheless, we have some fairly interesting all-around pictures of the Yemeni Houthis today, at least as far as the situation is concerned for them, or really how it's going. It's going quite poorly. It does appear that U.S. airstrikes are continuing to hit quite significantly throughout Yemeni-controlled territory. Specifically, larger buildups of Houthi forces have been targeted over the past few days, or largely week, since the air operations began. Most airstrikes have been targeted around the Sana'a Governorate, or the capital of Western Yemen, as well as Sadr, which is also another major buildup of Yemeni Houthi forces, really largely focused on conducting raids against the Saudi Arabians. And we've also been able to see, as of today, major U.S. airstrikes hitting Al-Hadida and the port of Al-Hadida, once again trying to cut down on their abilities or operational capacity to conduct acts of piracy within this area of the high seas. Nevertheless, it appears that U.S. forces continue to heavily strike Houthi forces in Yemen, and a lot of people are wondering, is it enough to end the Houthi threat? And it seems as though a lot of people are not having much faith that this is even enough to deal with the Houthis. And many are saying that there will be more needed from the United States of America, at least in terms of our military operations, to once and for all deal with the Houthi threat that is being posed to global shipping within this area. Others are saying that only time is going to tell, and we largely will need a lot more information to be gathered from statistics, information, and also the activity of the Houthis after these strikes conclude, to be able to see if they actually posed any sort of a long-term I guess you could say, debilitation to the Houthis and their fighting abilities. Others are saying that it will fully end the threat, meaning that these airstrikes are going to pretty much wipe out the Houthis, according to some, and others are a little bit unsure about this right now. But beyond that, Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So about 55% of the audience said no, more is going to be needed from the United States to fully eliminate the Houthi threat, while 24% said only time is going to tell, and a mere 14% said yes, it will fully end the Houthi threat out of Yemen. And honestly, the U.S. military is putting a whooping on the Houthis right now inside of Yemen. There's no doubt about that. They're sending a ton of ordnance in and launching a ton of air assets to go in and strike the Houthis. The problem is, though, it's limited to air assaults. So that's perfectly exactly what it is right now, which, of course, is somewhat limited because they're not actually going in on the ground and taking the Houthis out. They're simply bombing the areas where they think they are and hoping that eliminates the threat. So right now, it is working to an extent, but also the Houthis are still launching attacks on Israel and Western forces. We're still striking those missiles down before they reach populated areas, thankfully, but they're still launching attacks, which indicates they are somewhat resilient to these airstrikes. So I think more is going to be needed. And if we find out that the airstrikes are not going to actually eliminate the threat, then that brings in the question, is a ground operation needed to fully deal with it, or are we simply going to back off, regroup, and see what happens from there? Because the Houthis keep going farther and farther into a hole right now. They're not backing off. So I would say that I think more is going to be needed, actually much more, because the Houthis are used to this type of treatment with these airstrikes. And it looks like they've gotten either tunnels or underground bunkers that are protecting most of their forces from what we can tell. But I'm actually with the 55%. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I would have to say that, in my opinion, I believe that there will actually be much more that's needed from the United States to deal with the Houthis. This is I would be entirely honest with y'all, military operations over the past year and a half against the Yemeni Houthis under the Biden and Trump administrations have proven incredibly mixed results, largely throughout the entirety of the operation, and they've not ever truly showed that air campaigns alone can actually bring the Yemeni Houthis to their knees. To remind y'all of another example of this that I think would be very well storied, at least in American history, at least within recent modern American history, would be the war in Vietnam. During that time, as the United States was helping to support and defend South Vietnam from North Vietnamese aggression through the National Vietnamese Army, or the NVA, or the People's Army of Vietnam, or the Viet Cong, which is pretty much the People's Army of Vietnam, kind of in a way, in the sort. That's a whole complicated thing. But beyond that, the Viet Cong, as we'll call them, because that's how most people would know them, would continue to operate and conduct insurgent operations throughout the entirety of southern Vietnam through something that was called the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The Ho Chi Minh Trail wasn't really a trail. It was actually a series of trails, tunnels, and sympathizers to the North Vietnamese cause spread out throughout the countryside of the Vietnamese border, bordering along Laos and Cambodia, and sometimes actually skirting through Laos and Cambodia. That was used by North Vietnam to be able to continue to destabilize South Vietnam throughout the entirety of the war, and after the United States left in 1973, it actually helped significantly in the downfall of the southern Vietnamese nation due to the invasions that were, the largely offensives that were conducted by North Vietnam after the U.S. withdrawal from the conflict. With that in mind, the United States of America conducted a major amount of airstrikes against the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and also, once again, Ho Chi Minh Trail buildup sites, or wherever there may be some form of munitions, sympathizers, or any other actual infrastructure that might be used. We constantly attempted to bomb it and knock it out once and for all, and it never worked. Throughout the entirety of the conflict, or the active part of the conflict where the United States was involved, which was from 1965 up until 1973, there was no noticeable impact to the Ho Chi Minh Trail because of these air campaigns that were being conducted by the United States. Air campaigns, for the large part, have to be followed with some sort of ground action. It's much like how a cavalry charge in the Napoleonic era always had to be followed up by an infantry assault, otherwise it was never going to end up being successful. Or, like in the modern day, how a tank's barrage will direct fire onto a position has to be followed by an infantry assault, or largely the infantry, once they are able to have their artillery called in to bombard an enemy position, have to be able to continue to put pressure onto the enemy and isolate them and destroy them in detail. There always has to be an additional follow-up to any kind of larger action like this. And at this point, if we leave it as an airstrike alone and then move on from the area, it may stun the Houthis for some time, but the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps will resupply the Houthis. The Houthis will be able to rebuild their effectiveness and strength, and they will be right back to conducting acts of piracy within the southern Red Sea well on into the foreseeable future. It quite literally is like the situation with the Hamas and Hezbollah. Unless if there are actually forces on the ground, which are pretty much stopping the problem where it lies in those streets, the problem is never really going to go away. With that in mind, I would actually have to say that I would be in support of a limited U.S. ground operation in western Yemen, supporting the official Yemeni government, and help them to be able to retake this area of western Yemen, bring it back under legitimate Yemeni government control, and then leave a U.S. peacekeeping force of possibly a Marine Expeditionary Unit or less in the area to be able to support the Yemeni Houthi, well, not really the Yemeni Houthis, the Yemeni government, in conducting security operations within western Yemen and completely stopping any further acts of piracy or aggression or open rebellion against the Yemeni government into the future. That is how we'll be able to protect.
Do you think it's really possible to have a limited operation in Yemen to get rid of the Houthis? Because it seems like that would not be limited whatsoever. It would seem to be, in my opinion, that it would be a full-on operation, like a full-scale operation, to have to go in there and take them out, because that's not easy fighting. And once again, they do have underground infrastructure where they can hop out of the ground and attack forces if we put them on the ground. So it seems like it would probably turn into something a lot bigger than it seems like if we actually went in.
I think that we could deal with it fairly easily, because I don't believe that it would be a good idea for the Yemeni Houthis to pretty much just continue to exist. The Yemeni government, and let me go show this, the Yemeni civil war.
You said it wouldn't be a good idea for them to continue to exist.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a good idea for them to continue to exist because they control most of the major population centers of the country right now. And because of this, the central Yemeni government, which is the legitimate government of Yemen, which is in red, orange, and yellow, although the orange and yellow factions are different factions than the central government, they still support the central government's operations. So everything in yellow, orange, and red should be considered a part of the official Yemeni government's area of control. This area in green is what the Yemeni Houthis actually control, which is the terrorist force that we're trying to deal with right now. We don't have to get in there and actually invade the country like, say, an invasion of Iraq, because we would be supporting a friendly force, which would be the Yemeni government, against the Yemeni Houthis. So we wouldn't have to have a massive operation of, say, tens of thousands of U.S. soldiers or hundreds of thousands. It probably would be just several thousand, possibly 3 MEUs, which are Marine Expeditionary Units, in support of the Yemeni government as they conduct offensives to be able to take control of these areas and push them out of the region. Largely, even still, we want to make it much more limited in scale, we could just push the Houthis away from the coastline and out of Al-Hodeida, because if the Yemeni Houthis do not have any usable coastline, they're not able to conduct, at least at a minimum, any acts of piracy, such as taking a ship hostage and then bringing it to Al-Hodeida, because they don't have any shoreline to be able to base these operations from. But if we wanted to make sure that this was whole and complete, we would deal with the Houthis entirely and support the Yemeni government in finally crushing this rebel uprising of terrorists, and then bring this to an end once and for all. But that's still, even at that, while it sounds like a fairly strong sort of a plan, this is really only dealing with the symptoms of a larger illness within the region, which is the Islamic Republic of Iran. And as long as the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps continues to exist within this area, they will ensure that there is always some form of an insurgent force popping up in the area and trying to continue to conduct attacks that will destabilize the United States and Western interests as a whole, including the State of Israel. And for this reason, it really is more so important for the United States of America to focus our efforts onto the actual root of the illness within the region, which is the Islamic Republic of Iran. If Iran was dealt with, most of the proxy forces that we see, such as Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps itself, which largely is the puppet master pulling the strings of all of these groups, would cease to exist in any major form. There wouldn't be any equipment or funding for them any longer, and for that reason, they would never be able to successfully conduct armed insurgencies of a large scale again. There would be smaller scale insurgencies for many years to come, but they would never mount up to be a significant enough threat that they could even pose a dent to American or Western interests within the region or Israeli security interests. So with that in mind, it does seem as though a lot of people have been talking about, let's see here, one second. Hold up here. I got you, man. I got you. I didn't see that. But it does appear, before we get on into the next one, that there is a decent amount of other information that we have to talk about within the region, as we are going to be moving on into the western area of the Middle East, speaking about other Iranian proxies that have been operating in the region, and we're going to be moving on into Israel, as we have been able to hear that Israeli armed forces, and specifically the Israeli Air Force, have been conducting significant air campaigns of their own, while the U.S. ones are still being operated inside of the southern area of the Arabian Peninsula. The Israelis have been dealing with Iranian proxies of their own. And we have been able to hear, at least within the area of the Gaza Strip, that a significant airstrike occurred within the area of Jabalia, where we were able to see that some Israeli JDAMs landed within the streets, and we were able to hear not that long after that the Hamas political leader, Salah al-Bardawil, was killed in an Israeli airstrike in the southern area of the Gaza Strip, meaning that the Israelis were conducting precision attacks today throughout the entirety of the Gaza Strip against the Hamas forces that are continuing to exist within this area, and it does appear, at least at this point, that the Hamas forces that the Israelis are dealing with are still not really even at a strong enough strength to deal with the Israelis still. The Hamas forces largely were dealt a death blow over the past year and a half since Israeli ground operations began in the Gaza Strip, and we were able to see that a large amount of their supporters, followers, and fighters ended up taking significant hits, a significant amount of damage, and a large amount of the resources and cash that they would pull from, at least within the Strip, were pretty much ripped away from them, and they currently don't have a lot of resources to work with. For this reason, Hamas is at one of its weakest points that it's been at throughout most of its history. And it does appear that at this point, the Israelis are going to be taking advantage of this situation again, due to the fact that the Hamas rebels or Hamas terrorists have still not released the hostages that were demanded to be released by the Israelis and the United States government about several weeks ago. We have also been able to see that within southern Lebanon, there have been some significant strikes as well, as Israeli air forces have been continuing to try and hit Hezbollah targets within this area, and we can see that in this clip right here. Once again, the 2,000-pound bombs are being whipped out.
Honestly, I don't think they know anything different. They just bring out the biggest ones every time. I don't think there's like a different variety of missiles that they use. It seems like they're all just large.
Dude, the Israelis had their minds blown when someone said, "Have you ever heard of anything smaller than 2,000?" And they were like, "What?" They're like, 2,000? What do you mean there's a number less than 2,000? Man, I heard that in Israeli grade schools, they start counting instead of at 0 at 2,000. So they go 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, Moab.
Man.
And then they,
they only know to do it big. That's the way they do it every single time.
Yeah, man.
They got the budget for it too.
Man, honestly, man, like other countries like Russia, it's like, okay, let's start counting 1 kilogram. That's not a bomb, by the way. That's the crocodile. 5 kilograms. And now we're finally into the bombs. 10 kilograms. And then down there in Israel, it's just like 2,000. Take it or leave it. They never cheap out when it comes to the ordnance. But moving on into the city of Tyre, it appears that the Lebanese may be needing some new tires here very soon. Because we were able to see that the Israelis were also conducting airstrikes within the area, hitting Hezbollah forces within the city of Tyre. We were able to see some of the debris. And we also were able to see some additional videos as well of the Israelis actually conducting some of the airstrikes within the area. Check this out. And we can also see the smoke rising from the airstrike right there, once again in the city of Tyre. And it does appear that the Israelis were able to land some pretty successful hits onto Hezbollah forces within this region of southern Lebanon just recently. It does appear that a lot of people are talking, however, about the situation that's currently going on within the area of the Islamic Republic of Iran. As we were able to hear that U.S. officials have warned Americans to prepare to seek shelter in Israel due to a possible war. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts. And it does appear that many people are believing that the Islamic Republic of Iran may soon attack the state of Israel once more. Others are saying that it sounds like a general warning, not really too much to worry about. Some others are saying that it's nothing at all, status quo, because, you know, the Middle East is a region that it seems to be an endless war these days everywhere, and some others are unsure and undecided. But nevertheless, Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about this as well?
All right, so 53% of the audience said Iran is getting ready to attack, while 30% said it sounds like really a general warning by the U.S. officials, and 10% said it's nothing at all and it's status quo. And I would say that based on what we heard out of the U.S. Embassy in Israel, it sounds like they're telling people to get ready to take shelter in case some sort of escalation does break out. But once again, those escalations are already happening as we speak. The Houthis are launching ballistic missiles at Israel at their populated areas. And like I said before, the missiles are getting shot down, but nonetheless, that is still attacks being launched on Israel, which would cause a bit of an issue if one did make it through. So I think generally, this is probably just a general warning. Iran is attacking through its proxies right now. Iran is not attacking directly because they probably are not going to do that until they actually have a functional working nuclear weapon, because for right now they're trying to lay under the radar if they can, and they don't want to go all out by attacking Israel directly while they're trying to wrap up the development of their nuclear program. So I'm with the 30%, but Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, it sounds generally like a general warning as well. I would say that it's probably nothing significant, because I haven't seen the Islamic Republic of Iran at least preparing itself at this point for any kind of a major missile and drone attack against the state of Israel. We usually would be able to see that at least about 2 to 3 days out from when the attack is actually occurring, at least based off a historic precedent. So for that reason, we don't really have a purpose to believe that an Iranian strike is going to be coming incredibly soon. It does appear, however, that just because of the fact that the Israelis are now conducting larger military operations against Hezbollah and Hamas, and the Houthis have also been firing missiles at the state of Israel over the past few days, that the U.S. Department of State is now putting out a general warning for American citizens in the area, considering that reprisal attacks by Hezbollah and Hamas could also be imminent on top of the missile attacks that are already being conducted by the Yemeni Houthis. So I largely would believe that that's the reason for the warning. It's not really a sign of things to come per se. It's more so the fact that the region is once again getting into the full swing of war already, at least in against the proxy forces of Iran. And for this reason, they're telling people to shelter in place just in case if there were any kind of bottle rocket attacks by Hezbollah, Hamas, or cruise missile attacks by Hezbollah. But moving on from that, we also were able to hear one last little piece of news, that the Carl Vinson is still underway. We were able to hear that it's moving from the East China Sea to the Middle East to increase pressure on the Iran-backed Houthis. They're going to be dropping some additional joint standoff weapons on the Houthis once this thing arrives. And I got to tell you, the USS Carl Vinson, like any Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, is a sight to behold. It truly is. Do y'all know a little fun fact for y'all? Let me go show y'all this. I find this quite interesting. Aircraft carriers by country. And let me see if we have an infographic here. So, here are the aircraft carriers that are currently operational in the world. The United States has 11. This was 2019. I believe it's now 10. But we had 11. China had 2. I believe they're getting close to having their third one put into service here very soon. But you know what's really funny for all of y'all to know, as far as aircraft carriers go, is that 2 Chinese aircraft carriers still do not even possess the ability to hold enough aircraft that a single Nimitz-class aircraft carrier holds, or a Gerald R. Ford class. They don't have the ability. Like, a Chinese aircraft carrier can hold something around 26 to 28 aircraft if they're really packing them in. The Nimitz-class aircraft carrier can hold about 70. So it means that the Chinese would have to produce about 3 aircraft carriers of that type to be able to even compare to the carrying capacity of a single Nimitz-class carrier that's currently in service here in the United States. If you don't believe me, I could just pull it up. The Type 002 aircraft carrier. There we go. They call it the Shandong because that dong be Shannon. But beyond that,
What the hell?
Beyond that, it's able to carry 30 aircraft. Only 24 of them are actual aircraft, and they are the Shenyang J-15s, which is their version of an Su-30. But also, on top of that, another thing that's interesting is that they're able to carry a limited number of aircraft. Helicopters. But let me go show y'all a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, which are going to be replaced over time by the Gerald R. Ford class. This is the most common aircraft carrier that we currently have in service. It makes up the bulk of the U.S. Navy's carrier fleet, or carrier forces, but most importantly, when we get down to the carrying capacity of this aircraft carrier, it can carry 85 to 90 fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters, meaning that if you really pack them in, the Nimitz class is able to carry 3 times the amount of aircraft on a single ship than 3 Chinese aircraft carriers would be able to. We're speaking about the Shandong, which you can see right there. So that is something to remind people of, because people always work, at least, in the raw numbers, and they always do something else additional that I find to be a little bit stupid, is that they never actually analyze the quality of what they're talking about. Like, for example, some people always say that the Chinese have a larger navy. If you ever look at the numbers, you'll know that they have a larger navy because about half of it's made up of motor torpedo boats. If you look at the U.S. Navy, it's made up of the highest quality, the finest tech that the 80s and the 90s had to offer. And that truly is something.
Yes, the Americans, they do know their carriers well. Honestly, though, it's crazy to think that China, being such a large nation that wants to be a very powerful military, obviously, that they really neglected to build out their aircraft carriers and really kind of neglected to build out their navy as a whole. It's kind of crazy.
It really is something. Like, they're trying to turn it into a blue water fleet over time, and they are building ships at a massive pace. But let me go show y'all the People's Liberation Army Navy. Let's see here. Do we have it here? There we go. The People's Liberation Army Navy. That's their symbol, just so that we all can be familiarized with it. But that is their flag. So if you ever see that flag while you're at sea, and you're in the South China Sea, be prepared to hear, "This is Chinese Sheriff God." Like, you better be ready to hear it, because they're probably going to hail you over the comms. But moving on from that, let me go show y'all the list of available ships that are in the Chinese Navy, because this is something that some people just never really pay attention to that much, and I always find it very interesting with that. So, let's see here. Ships and submarines. That's what we want. That's what we need. So let me go get this for y'all. Ah, yes. The Great Chinese Navy. With about 500 vessels in service, it is technically the largest navy currently in service in the entire world. It is larger than the US Navy. But the thing about that, though, the little thing about that, though, is that 107 of those are missile boats. And they're not impressive when you look at them. These things could be swatted away like flies. There are 26 submarine chasers, which are once again incredibly small vessels. They also have 36 mine countermeasure vessels, which are pretty much minesweepers. Once again, very specialized. So about 170 of those vessels, actually, if you include the gunboats, are not really usable outside of China's coastal waters, and you won't really see them much farther out than a couple of hundred miles away from the mainland. So as long as you aren't right on the Chinese shoreline, about 30% of their navy doesn't even really matter. It's really everything else beyond that. Corvettes, frigates, destroyers, and submarines and everything else does pose much more of a threat to the U.S. Navy, at least in blue water operations. But once again, most importantly to note, there isn't a lot of them. Like, let me go and show y'all this. Let me go and show y'all this. I gotta show y'all this. We have to show y'all this. Because some people are gonna be like, well, motor torpedo boats, or torpedo boats, those still sound a little bit concerning. So let me go get y'all one, just so that way I can show it to y'all. And let's see, coastal warfare vessels. Oh, buddy, here they are. This is what 110 vessels of the Chinese Navy are. They are these.
It looks like maybe like a nicer modified version of what could have been maybe like a fishing vessel or something at one point.
It pretty much is. I mean, that's the best way to explain it. It has 4 anti-ship missiles on board, a fairly limited complement. It also has a main gun, fairly small in caliber, generally used for air defense, and it also has 2 version. I guess you could call these their version of a phalanx or a sea whiz, if you want to call it that. But they are also mounted aft of the ship. But beyond that, that's what most of the Chinese Navy is made up of. These things really can't operate that far away from China's coast, and not only that, they are very limited in their defensive abilities. They will not be able to conduct a lot to save themselves, so it would be quite easy for the U.S. Navy or a carrier strike group to start knocking these things out before they even really posed a threat. Not only that, these things have to get within range of a U.S. carrier strike group in the first place to be able to fire off its anti-ship missiles, which probably nowadays would be maybe about 150 miles away, but a carrier's detection radius, or at least a radius where the carrier strike group would know of incoming enemy vessels, is hundreds of miles, usually about 500 miles away from the carrier itself when conducting combat operations. So with that in mind, this thing is never going to even get close to a carrier, because it has to make it about 300 miles through airspace where it's going to be slaughtered to even get in range to fire these anti-ship missiles. So in short, there really isn't a way for the Chinese to still compete with the United States on the open seas, because the U.S. Navy, some people diss on the U.S. Navy. We're not wanting the U.S. Navy Academy. We want the U.S. Navy. Some people try and diss on the U.S. Navy because they say it looks a little old, but the thing is that the U.S. Navy is still far more powerful than any other Navy that's currently at sea, just due to the fact that we have 10 operational aircraft carriers right now. Much more for the fact that pretty much all of the ships in the U.S. Navy are blue water vessels, meaning that they can travel long distances over open oceans, so they can go quite literally anywhere around the world as long as they're able to be refueled and resupplied. And the Navy does have resupply abilities through the Merchant Marine, and also its own built-in oilers, or also colliers for the large part as well, although they're really not colliers anymore. But anyways, moving on from that little bit of terminology, let's get to the equipment of the Navy, because it's so important to know. Look at that, Matthew. 10 Nimitz-class aircraft carriers are in service. 10 of them. 10.
That's honestly fantastic. That's a large number, honestly. The only thing I wonder about those, obviously, the U.S. Navy is very, very powerful and it's very large. It outdoes China's by a long shot. But are there ways for China to get around that by basically, like, for example, launching large swarms of drones? Because drones are going to be the one thing that I think China will have an advantage on. They seem to be focusing quite heavily on that because they probably know that their Navy is at a disadvantage. And also, they're probably at a disadvantage on the ground forces side of things as well, because their troops have never really fought a real war in modern history. So are they going to try to use drones to try to take down these vessels in large numbers?
I would doubt it, because these aircraft carriers are going to be pretty far off the coast, hundreds, if not probably 1,000 miles away. Once again, operating at the very range of what their aircraft can operate at, conducting air operations. Because the carriers, man, are not going to be pulling up like right at Wenzhou and going, "Hey, you got that soup? Like you got that soup made of bat?" Like they're not going to be doing that. They're going to be pretty far off the coast. So unless the Chinese have hundreds or thousands of drones that can fly 1,000 miles out to sea with hundreds of pounds of explosives on board each of them, or naval drones that can do the same and not be detected, that would be pretty difficult. Not only that, each of these carriers is protected by a massive surrounding fleet of destroyers and cruisers, and even if they ran out of air-to-air missiles, those destroyers and cruisers do have CWIS systems that can be used to shoot down drones, and they also have the main guns as well, the 127mm main guns, that pretty much operate in the modern sense of the word as flak cannons, which can just fire directly into any kind of an incoming drone swarm, whether it be sea-based or air-based, and largely knock them out. So there really is no way to threaten an aircraft carrier group like that, because unlike the Russians, all of our stuff works. And on top of that, we have far more fleshed out, I guess you could say, naval doctrine that really ensures that if any threat is detected, it's already hundreds of miles away by the time it's detected, instead of being detected just a couple of dozen miles away or just less than 10 miles away from impact. So
that's true. The only thing that worries me, though, is because we have seen that China's been testing their new stealth CH-7, the long-range stealth flying wing drone that they have. And of course, I think actually that's almost the equivalent of what the drones are going to be to the new F-47 that the U.S. just released. But they have those, and apparently they are either in production or they're being tested or something like that. But they're stealth, and they can generally evade detection before they hit a target. And I wonder if they're going to have those in large quantities if they ever go to war with us, and maybe that could get around all of our detection systems and also these massive protections that the aircraft carriers have. Could they make their way through that protection net and then hit in large numbers on these vessels?
Possibly, but I would largely doubt it. Like it's possible if the Chinese somehow magically whipped these things out and they were able to travel about 1,000 miles without being detected, but the chances of that are fairly slim, especially with how the Chinese, like the Russians, never really have designed their aircraft to conduct incredibly long-range operations. They would have to be refueled in flight, and that aerial tanker would most likely be detected on radar, which would let people know, especially considering that it would look like it's off in the middle of nowhere on its own, that there have to be some sort of stealth aircraft nearby that are conducting an operation near to the carrier and are being refueled. Also, on top of that, there is visual identification that would be conducted by aircraft in operation, because it's not like an aircraft carrier, when it's in combat operations, just sits there. It has aircraft in the air 24/7, and a lot of those are conducting patrols around the carrier group itself and visually seeing if there were any kind of targets or threats that may pose an issue to the carrier strike group or its safety. And once again, those aircraft can also be outfitted and equipped to deal with surface-based drones that are trying to attack the vessels, or air-based drones as well if they needed to. So generally, they would probably be fine. I mean, once again, we do have to remember, Matthew, that when the Iranians attacked the Israelis with hundreds of drones, I think it was like 300 or 400 or so, the U.S. Air Force alone and the Navy shot down about 200 of those, pretty much 50% of them, and it only had one aircraft carrier strike group in the area and a couple of air squadrons from the Air Force. So if they were able to shoot down...
But those drones that Iran is using are the Shahed variety. So they're very loud. They're the lawnmower powered ones with the small like 2-stroke engines, and they're very detectable. Like you can see them coming in. these drones that China is working on, and it's called the JG-11 is one of them, and also the CH-7 is a different one. They're stealth allegedly, or at least they claim they're stealth, and also they're jet powered, so they're a lot quieter than these other drones. So I think these are entirely different leagues of drones that China's coming up with, and they seem to be putting a lot of their focus into that for some reason, because I think they think that that is their strong suit, and it appears to be, if their claims are accurate, which once again, take it with a grain of salt, it's their claims, it looks like these could be on par with what we have, or maybe a slightly surpassing what we have in our own drone capabilities here in the U.S.
I would say, and it might pose a risk, but I still think not so because of the range issues. Because whether they're stealth or not, they have to be able to get to the target in the first place, and I probably don't think that they would be able to without being refueled in air. And considering that aerial refueler would probably be within the carrier defense zone, it probably would get shot down, or pretty much effectively it means they wouldn't have the range to be able to hit the ship. So that would largely be my answer to that. But moving on from that, we do see that the Navy also has a large amount of other vessels that could be called upon as well if there was ever a need for them within the area, or largely, once again, ships that China doesn't have. For example, China doesn't have this amazing thing called an amphibious assault ship, or as they used to be known, LHDs, which are a great vessel. Not really as potent as an aircraft carrier, but still they're able to push their own weight around in their own sense. They largely support amphibious operations or near-to-shore operations. But we also have the amphibious command ships. These things look like garbage. But actually, interestingly enough, these things are some of the most important ships in the fleet, because you can pull them into an area and they will pretty much run an entire theater out of a single ship like this one. So that's pretty interesting in its own right. We also have a large amount of amphibious transport docks like these. These are great. I like them. They look nice. But more importantly, getting on down into the actual cruisers, we have 9 cruisers in service, which are the Ticonderogas. These are eventually going to be replaced, I believe, but at this point, I haven't heard of what the replacement's going to be. So at this point, it's just the Ticonderogas. We also have 74 destroyers, most of them of the Arleigh Burke class, but there are some other destroyers of different classes. For example, the USS Sumwalt, which everyone would like to forget about. There are also supposed to be 2 more that are supposed to be put into service. The USS Michael Monsoor and the Lyndon B. Johnson. I've actually heard that they added on to the Lyndon B. Johnson this megaphone that when they sink a ship, you hear like a zipper unzip, and then you hear, "Look at it! Look how big it is!" like
Oh my god, man! Jumbo.
Yeah, we got Jumbo out here, Jumbo. It's like, dude, honestly, I can't wait to see that one in service. We also have some new frigates that are going to be put into service soon. These look almost like modernized Oliver Hazard Perrys. I'm not going to lie, everything goes back to Oliver Hazard Perrys when you get into the frigates. Like, they all look the same. We also have the littoral combat ships, which are corvettes. We have 26 of them. No one likes the Independence class anymore, like, at least for its structural issues. I have to say it's cool as hell. I really like it for that reason. But we also have the Freedom class as well, quite a large number. We also have the Expeditionary Mobile bases. Pretty interesting in their own right, not really talked about, and to be entirely honest with y'all, I don't really know a lot about it. We have a couple of minesweepers, which are these. And we also have some technological research ships and a USS Constitution for morale reasons and historical reasons. I think it's cool.
I think this one right here could go up against the Iran Navy, honestly.
Dude, honestly, man, the Iranian Navy would be like, what the hell is that? And then the captain on this thing, fire full broadside. It's like, dude, they wouldn't even see it coming, man. Like, they wouldn't.
They don't have any defense against the broadside tactic.
Man, honestly, it would be pretty sick. But beyond that, notice this. The Navy doesn't, well, these aren't counted on the official count of naval service vessels. These are the submarines. We're not even going to go over the submarines, but all of our ships in the Navy are actual combat vessels that are blue water in nature. The Chinese don't have that. So in terms of actual projection power, the Chinese Navy is still a significant bit smaller than the US Navy, although it's technically bigger on paper. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and it is now time for us to move on out of the middle of the East, and it's now time for us to move on up into Ukraine, or specifically Eastern Europe, as its own news segment tonight. But before we get into that, I have to say, holy moly. We didn't expect this night to be big. And it's been a huge night. 55,000 people have already watched this stream as of this point. And also, we had a peak viewership here tonight of about 10.9 thousand people. I've got to say,
holy cow.
I'm like, honestly, Matthew, this is way beyond our projections because in case you all haven't heard of this, y'all probably haven't because we don't talk about this a lot. Usually every single night, just for the hell of it, although, to be honest, viewership numbers actually don't really matter and how the channel or anything runs behind the scenes, but we always try and figure out before the show, during the countdown, just for the sake of it, how many people probably will be here. And tonight we were projecting in the first 3 minutes that we were maybe going to reach a peak viewership of 9,000 people. And we superseded that by about 2,000 folks. And not only that, the overall viewership's been absolutely crazy. Like, I got to thank everyone for watching tonight. I hope y'all been enjoying our news so far. We still have a lot more to go in Eastern Europe, specifically about Poland and then about what's going on in the actual war in Ukraine. But I got to thank all of y'all for being here tonight so far. We are very honored and thankful to be able to provide news to tens of thousands of people literally over the course of just 1 hour. And if y'all have enjoyed so far, I know that a lot of people don't like to hear these plugs. I hate to tell this to y'all, but crazily enough, they actually work. Like when you hear the people say like, comment, and subscribe on their YouTube videos, I used to remember, I was like, those are just tacky as hell. They are, and I will admit that when we do it, it's tacky, but crazily enough, it actually gets people to subscribe. So if you are enjoying this news right now, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because we always cover the news 6 days a week, every single day, except for Mondays. Mondays we take off, at least for live streams, but if there's any big news to cover any given day, we will always be putting out a short war summary on it and letting y'all know in a really annotated form what's going on. So please make sure to subscribe. Please make sure to. And with that, before we move on, and crazily enough, y'all are not going to believe this. Like, if you believe that I was lying about that, we just gained 25 subscribers. Just as I said, please subscribe. Literally, just jumped up 25. So I don't know. I don't know how that works. Like it's crazy, but I'm glad it does work. So please make sure to subscribe if you're liking it, because we are always working hard behind the scenes to get all of y'all the news, practically every single day of the week, 7 days a week. But with that, we are going to be moving on into the Eastern European segment. Before we do, though, I do want to make sure that we get a couple of questions from the chat. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so let's jump into our first super chat of the night, and this one is going to go to Chris's mom, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Chris's mom, for that support and coming in here and deciding to help keep the channel running. We do appreciate it, and we hope you haven't been working too hard out there. They said, I served with the 82nd in Afghanistan, and from that experience, I can't help but ask, are we headed toward World War III? And Poland and others are ramping up. It feels familiar, and I support the West, but are we repeating history?
I gotta thank you for the support, Chris's mom. The massive support, your 5th super chat ever, and it's a massive one. It's actually the biggest one of the night so far. And I also have to say that is very interesting to hear that you served in the 82nd in Afghanistan, because we actually know someone who was serving in the 82nd, if I'm remembering correctly, during that time. If you know who I'm talking about, Matthew.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so I think you may actually know the guy. Like, if you want to reach out to us over Twitter, we might be able to check, because that would be fairly interesting and a really small world kind of a thing if the person we know, who was from the 82nd and also in Afghanistan, was a guy that you knew, who you were also in the 82nd and in Afghanistan, possibly with the same guy at the same time. Although the 82nd was in Afghanistan for years, so maybe it was a little bit later or earlier than when he was there, but that's actually pretty crazy to hear that you were in the 82nd in Afghanistan. But beyond that, to answer your question, it's a very interesting situation. I don't want to say that we're getting into World War III, because I don't want to cause people to panic, and also I don't want to sound like other people who put out emergency alert streams with giant red like thumbnails that say emergency alert, and they say the nuclear bombers are flying every day and we're all going to die every single day.
The code just came in, man. The code just came in. The planes are flying. The bombs are getting ready. They're going, man. They're going.
Dude, it could be like the code for like the refueling node. It's like Alpha 6 Bravo Niner. Oh, there it is. That's the code. Like, it's,
oh my god, I can't take it, man. It's just clickbait to the extreme. That is like actual, like, if there was a definition for clickbait in the Webster's dictionary, it would have that next to it.
It would, because that, like, it is insanity. It's like you can't be dying every day in the next few hours every day. Like you can't be wrong every day on that. Like that's something that we really try and be careful about here, to be honest with you, Chris's mom. And that's why I really don't want to say that World War III is coming. Although it kind of does look like it, because we do see that there is militarization going on in Europe. To be entirely honest, at this point, it is breakneck speeds of militarization that's currently going on in Europe. The Russian Federation doesn't seem at all interested in ending the war in Ukraine, and it actually does sound like they're possibly going to try and extend it into the rest of Eastern Europe, pretty much kicking off World War III. We can see that the United States and the faith of the United States being involved in foreign conflicts outside of the Middle East seems to be wavering, and for that reason that may embolden countries like the Russian Federation and China to act on their territorial ambitions. All these things are sorts of diplomatic, I guess you could say, developments that could lead to the creation of a world war, although this has happened to some extent in the past, and it largely has been just blown over. You could try and argue that the Cold War is one of those historical instances. I would be entirely honest. I would have to say it really isn't, because the United States was almost always openly and aggressively in support of Western and American interests throughout the entirety of the Cold War. So it's pretty hard to make the argument that that would be a time where America really wasn't all the way there, but, you know, war was being averted, because we were there, and it was because of our aggressive existence around the entirety of the world and the aggressive defense of our interests that we didn't see that a major Cold War broke out. Well, a major World War, for that reason, broke out. Sorry, I slipped on the wordage there. So I would say it's a little bit hard to tell, to be entirely honest. Historically, this would be some of the building blocks to heading to a world war, but I would like to say that hopefully we'll see that it makes it to the actual precipice of becoming a world war, and then everyone backs off. Because that also has happened as well in the past, where all the chips lined up, it was going to be a world war, and then it just stopped, and everyone backed off, everyone flinched, everyone got to negotiating, or negotiating nothing, and just trying to smooth over the tensions, and then everything went back to normal. I would hope that that would be the case, instead of us continuing to go down this path and then getting on into a world war itself. Because to be entirely honest with you, I was watching a little bit today of the Witkoff delegation. Not really the Witkoff delegation, but Witkoff went and had an interview with Tucky G. Many of y'all know he's a favorite of ours, and I'm saying that very sarcastically. But I was listening to Witkoff talk about the situation with the American-Russian negotiations over the Ukraine war, and it was a little bit shocking that the guy couldn't pronounce any of the regions that were being contended in Ukraine.
Well, he forgot some of the names of them too, not just mispronouncing them, but also forgot, like, I think 2 of them. He couldn't even name them.
Yeah, you know, like, we belt through them every night, and here it's a pretty standard thing to say Crimea, Zaporizhia, Luhansk, Donetsk, and Kherson. Those are just the regions that are currently being contested or the Russians currently occupy to some extent, and we talk about them a great deal here on this channel. We talk about many other regions in great detail and depth, and generally know their geographical parameters and their standards, and I feel like we have a pretty good grasp of what's going on here on this channel. It's a very concerning thing to see that Witkoff, the leader of our diplomatic delegation right now, doesn't even really understand what the actual, I guess you could say, assets or physical items that are being negotiated right now are even what they are by name. That's a little bit concerning to me, because it may be portraying to the Russians that this delegation is incredibly gullible, and it would be like taking candy from a baby. And they may be viewing the United States as that, because once again, a diplomatic delegation is an extension of the U.S. government. It's actually the representative of the office of the president, at least within this particular instance. And so the current representative of the office of the president of the United States to the Russian Federation doesn't even really know what they're negotiating about. Now, there was another guy on the delegation. His name was Keith Kellogg, and Kellogg is a retired lieutenant general, and he has a very good grasp and understanding. I've heard him talk about it before on what's going on in Ukraine, and kind of more harder line stance about the conflict. It's not wildly hard line to the point of Ukraine has to get back all their territory and we have to kill all Russians. It's not that kind of a hard line stance, but it's a lot more hard line than the one that Witkoff seems to be putting forward, and he was removed from the delegation largely because of Russian protest. So Right now, our delegation doesn't really look incredibly strong. It looks like it may not even really understand what it's speaking on, and that may produce some incredibly bad results. Even if the negotiations go nowhere and the war keeps going, the Russian Federation may understand that the representatives of the United States are incredibly inexperienced in their knowledge and understanding of diplomatic affairs or even what's being talked about, and they may start to view the United States as a country that may be easy to take advantage of due to efforts at misconceptions or possibly even trying to mislead the U.S. delegating teams or the office of the president due to a perceived naivety on these kinds of issues. So that was something that was a little bit concerning to me. I was thinking if anything would possibly embolden the Russians to create a third world war, it may be the fact that the United States, which would be the leader of a Western sphere, at least as far as diplomatic negotiations will be concerned, doesn't even really have a grasp on what's at play or what's at stake, and they may be able to take advantage of that into the future. Not saying that that would be the complete crux of why a world war would start in Eastern Europe, but that may start to guide Russian decision making in a direction to where they think that a world war may actually be somewhat plausible, and they may even come out a little bit better at the end of it than they started it off at. Although they're not going to be, wildly successful, they would still be able to achieve something possibly, maybe like the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Eastern Europe, although NATO would still exist intact. That could be something that they would be trying to look for. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. And also, Gary said, what are you on about? I mean, if you listen, it's like, man, if you listen. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And I thank you once again for the support, Chris's mom, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. Also, really quickly, because I want to make sure to cite this so that way people know it as a source. I'm not telling y'all to go watch Tucker Carlson's show. I'll be entirely honest with y'all. I don't even know who Tucker Carlson appeals to, because he's honestly just honestly, in my opinion, he's almost treasonous in what he says, and he's an appeaser throughout. Like, I don't like some people would say that he's right leaning. I don't even think he leans right. I think he just leans at whatever puts America at a severe disadvantage. And so I'm not encouraging you to go watch his show, but we do have a clip of, I think we actually have a clip of this on our Twitter, Matthew. If y'all want to go to our Twitter, you can go and see the very part of the interview that Tucker Carlson had with Witkoff, where Witkoff didn't even know what regions were being contested inside of Ukraine, which once again, when we have the leader of our diplomatic delegation not even understanding the territorial regions at play or their geographical borders or possibly even the resources that are involved or the population numbers involved in the negotiations, it's a fairly concerning thing coming from a negotiating standpoint, because the Russians could just rob us blind because the negotiator doesn't even know what he's really talking about or what's even at stake or at play right now. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And once again, I want to say this. Diplomatic dialogue with the Russians is not a bad thing. If anything, it's going to prove that the Russians are not willing to end the war, which honestly would be in the benefit of American Western interests. So it would make our prerogatives a lot more clear. But at the same time, I believe that Witkoff needs to be removed as the head of the negotiating team due to his inexperience and lack of knowledge on the topic, and needs to be replaced with the diplomatic negotiator that has far more knowledge and experience on the topic, so that way the U.S. position can be represented properly along with the Ukrainian position, because at this point it appears that Witkoff may be incompetent in his duties of being the chief negotiator of the U.S. diplomatic delegation. So
I just don't think he has. He just really doesn't have the background to be in that position, actually, because like you said, Kellogg was a lieutenant general in the U.S. Army, so he had the expertise to actually go in there and actually know what he was talking about. Witkoff, to my understanding, is a real estate investor and he's a lawyer. And he's probably good at what he does, but this is different. This is geopolitics, and there's people that actually specifically focus and study this area that would probably be much more equipped to handle it. So I think that's why Putin wanted to get rid of Kellogg, is because Kellogg knew the things that Putin was asking for in the battlefield made no sense from a military standpoint, and Putin needed a guy who was ignorant to that fact to be able to get anywhere. So that's why he insisted that Kellogg get removed.
I would have to agree. And it may have been that Kellogg didn't really jive with Witkoff. There may have actually been some issues there because Kellogg actually understood what was at play and understood a lot about the actual situation that was going on, and Witkoff didn't. And to be entirely honest with y'all, Witkoff came off very arrogant in the clips I was watching of that interview today. And it may have been that Witkoff wasn't willing to hear someone say, actually, you're misunderstanding the situation. Here's what's at stake. He didn't want to hear that. And that may have actually led to the Russians having their request accepted at face value to remove Kellogg from the diplomatic team, is that there was already some sort of friction going on inside the team itself in between the two. Maybe. But once again, I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, in honor of that super chat, I asked a very interesting poll question. It said, what would you do if World War III starts? 42% said, I'm going to turn on the Enforcer channel. That's a good choice right there. 39% said, I'd just keep living normally. 10% said, I would go join the military ASAP. And 9% said, I'd bug out and go into hiding. And honestly, and also, I mean, no offense by this, by the way, but the majority of our audience is not a 20 to 30 years old. So the young people would probably go join the military, or hopefully they'd want to, like they used to do back in the old days during the World Wars. But most people on our channel, being in the older age bracket, would probably not be going to join the military. So probably only why 10% said that. But I would say turning on the Enforcer channel is probably a good thing to be, and I'll be here automatically. So yeah, turn it on and listen to the analysis. I say I vote for the 42%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to vote for the 42% as well. I would be here by default, so y'all would be turning on the channel that I turned on to run for y'all. So like I have to be with the 42%. As far as the 39%, I mean, most people would probably go on living normally. I saw someone think that it was apocalypto in the chat. They were like, I don't get it. How will you keep living normal when food and work will be shorter and everyone will start killing for any left food and medicine? Well, hey, easy, dude. It's not Mad Max now. Like, World War II happened and rationing got brought into being. Like, people weren't out in the streets, like, killing each other for a bite to eat in World War II. Like, it wasn't like that. There will be, like, organized rationing, things like that are going on. There will be a shift to a wartime economy, so consumer goods will be next to non-existent or largely non-existent throughout that period of time, except for essentials. So that will largely be the case. So I would say that, in my honest opinion, most people probably would going on living normal lives. Of course, they wouldn't have everything that they would want. Like, you're not going to be seeing people buying, new cars or anything like that for the most part. But you would see that people would be continuing on their normal lives for the most part. However, people our age would be, of course, getting into the military, either being drafted or we would be volunteering. I don't really know. I'll be entirely honest with you. I really don't know what would happen with me if a world war started, because if you haven't been around on the channel long enough, I actually have a pretty significant form of scoliosis. It's not significant enough to notice unless if you really stare at me. But if y'all ever see me in public and I try to stand straight, y'all actually notice that my torso leans to the left a little bit, and that's because my spine has a 30-degree curvature down there.
Whoa, I thought you didn't take sides, man. You're saying you're leaning left. What? Whoa.
Man, I'm turning into Karl Marx. I said, call this spine communist because we turn this thing left. But beyond that, the spine curves at the base 30 degrees to the left. So I actually lean to the left a little bit, which is also, by the way, I want to make this clear. I'm not a communist. I don't like commies. All right, let me make that clear. That was a joke. But the military said, just to make this clear, they wouldn't even take me with a waiver. Like everyone always says that you can have a waiver for that. They told me I was damaged goods, like quite up front. They were like, we don't even want you. You can't even join. And I was told that by every recruiter I ever talked to. It's like they blacklisted me. Like they told everyone, that guy is broken. We don't want to play with him anymore. And so they wouldn't even talk to me. So I don't know if a draft began, if I would even be drafted or not. I think Matthew is actually a perfect physical fitness to be drafted.
Yes, I am. I can pass all the PT tests with flying colors and duck walk. So they'll be like, oh, yes, you young man, you come right here.
Yeah, so he might go. I don't know if he would go though, because like I don't know what the whole position is with him being a partner on the channel. Like I don't know anything about that, so he might go, he might not go. The chances is I wouldn't go in the first round because one, they wouldn't allow me to volunteer. Two, if they drafted me, they would disqualify me medically. So I would probably go later if this went on for an incredibly long time, which it probably wouldn't. It would probably only go on for several months until they lowered the draft requirements, because usually as a war goes on, they start to allowing groups that were disqualified previously to be drafted. So the U.S. Congress would go through and they would say people with scoliosis can now be drafted into military service, and then I would get drafted in some later wave. So that's largely how it probably worked for me. Matthew can pretty much go right off the bat. So we won't be going in at the same time on that one, unfortunately, if that started. But until then, this channel would be running. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. And I do thank you once again for throwing in some support right there. And also, I thank you all for answering that poll. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Ari Sowini, who's another longtime channel legend, and thank you very much, Ari, for that $50 support and helping to keep us running, and we do appreciate it very much. And Ari said, LSA to everyone, and do you believe a fair Ukraine peace deal is possible? And if not, how long before this war just stagnates?
Thank you for the support, Ari Sweeney. And I would have to say that, in my opinion, there is a way for a fair peace deal to be achieved in Ukraine, but it's not going to be achieved now. Wars don't end when people want them to, and some people don't really have a concept of that here in the United States, because I continue to see people say that the war should end now, and that dying should stop, and I'd have to agree that people getting killed in the war isn't a great thing. But the reality of the matter is that once a war starts, it is a beast of its own that is uncontrollable. You can control whether you win or lose to some extent, but you can't really control when it ends. It ends when it wants to end. There's really no way to force it beforehand. So a war keeps going until both sides pretty much see eye to eye, and they're able to just negotiate that, you know, all it is what it is for the large part. That's called let's see, that would be called a let's see, that would be called, let me see here, I'm trying to think, it's something antebellum. I've told it to y'all before, and it is it generally means everything goes back to the way it was before the war. So nobody gets anything on either side. No one gets any compensation. It quite literally is, we just end the war and stop it, and everything returns back to the way it was before the war. No one gets anything. That's pretty much is. Let's see. It's a something antebellum. I'm trying to think of it. It's so hard. It's like a. It pretty much means like a white peace before the war kind of a deal. But I just still can't remember it. I cannot remember it worth a damn right now. I don't know why. But anyways, that is one way for the war to end, but that will take a much longer time because the Russians don't see eye to eye right now. So the war has to keep going until you beat the Russian. There we go. Mosquito Bite said it. Status quo antebellum. I don't know why I forgot that, but it's status quo antebellum means that everything goes back to the way it was before the war. But with the Russians, it cannot happen right now. So we want a fair peace deal. We have to keep the war going. So more people are going to have to die. We're going to have to continue to fight the Russians. We're going to have to continue to beat the Russians into the ground to have them see eye to eye with Ukraine, so that way there is a fair peace deal. But if we're trying to force a peace deal as it is right now, the Russians have the hand, at least in the negotiations right now. America is desperate to secure a peace on behalf of itself and Ukraine. The Russian Federation doesn't really want a peace, and they want the war to keep going until they achieve what they want. So the United States is forced into a position that we either keep the war going until the Russians see eye to eye, and then there is a fair peace deal, or we end the war now and really give in to Russia's demands just for the fact that we want to end the war right now. I don't know what it is with some people who think like this, but it's not Amazon Prime. You can't have a war end tomorrow, or 3-day shipping. It doesn't happen. This war has to keep going until we have fair terms. People are going to die over that, but that's a fact of life, especially when it comes to things like war. So with that in mind, my answer to you, Ari Sweeney, would be that there can be a fair peace deal, but there's going to have to be a lot more war to come before we get to a fair peace deal. It just cannot happen right now with the current circumstances with how the Russian Federation is acting and the U.S. Negotiating stance on this so far. It just will not be able to happen. It will be unfair if we try and get a peace right now. So with that,
honestly, I think that Putin ought to be removed from power. That ought to be a term in the agreement whenever it is agreed upon. Since he was stupid enough to start the war, then he should have to go.
Yeah, I mean, you could. you could generally try and push for something like that, but you would honestly have to win. Like, you would have to win the whole war, like an unconditional victory. The Russians would have to unconditionally surrender to get them to probably to agree to a term like that. Because if Putin's at the helm, man, I think he actually would get to using tactical nuclear weapons on the battlefield before he ever even agreed to a term like that.
Indeed, I think so.
And also, I saw someone say they're switching sides. I don't know which side you're switching to, but if you're switching to ours, I thank you for switching to it because, like, I don't know what side you're on. But beyond that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. But once again, if you want good terms, if you want fair terms, you have to fight it out until you get what you're looking for. Because if you give up, you're not going to get it. But anyways, I hope that does address that well. Once again, Ari Sweeney, huge thanks to you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into Eastern Europe.
All right, so this one is going to go to none other than Big Daddy J, DC Audio FTW, puts in a 20, and thank you very much, Big Daddy J, for that support. He said, long live the LSA, and take one from the chat, please.
And I thank you for the support, Big Daddy J. Hey! I got to thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And we will make sure to get one from the live chat in your honor. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and this live chat question goes to Max Dad, who says, does an aircraft carrier have pilots for each plane on the carrier?
Yes, they do. Each plane has its own pilot on the carrier. They're like, it's not like Battlefield where you get like free planes on the deck, like where if you crash one, you go back and get another. Each pilot has a plane. So that would be my answer to your question. So I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can right now. And also, aircraft usually have the same pilot when they're put into service. You really don't interchange pilots in between other aircraft because, kind of like anything else, the aircraft is kind of like their horse, if you want to call it that. Each aircraft has a slightly different little quirk, possibly maybe different systems that are faulty or maybe not working entirely that pilot's familiar with. So if you throw a different pilot into his plane, he might not know any of that. And then he finds that out when he really shouldn't be needing to find that out. So that's generally why each pilot is to each of their planes. So that way they know the quirks and features, like Doug DeMuro would, of their aircraft, and they're able to account for that properly. And so that way when they go into combat, they're riding in on their trusted steed. That's pretty much the way it's viewed even in the modern day. So with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. And with that, thank you for sponsoring an interesting live chat right there. But I hope I was able to answer that well. And it is time for us to move on into Eastern Europe. And already with the big banger that we were able to hear that the Polish Republic is now deploying 11,000 Polish troops on the border with Belarus. This is a significant uppage from their current number of Polish troops along the border. And it does appear that the Polish Republic is beginning to face down the CSTO, which is the Russian version of NATO, once more as they are preparing for a possible war in Eastern Europe. This is something that has been going on for a while, or at least Polish politicians and leadership has been saying, and it does appear that at this point they are beginning to move definitively on that stance that there is a war coming, and they are now going to be laying out minefields, increasing the troop deployments on the borders, and they're also going to be mobilizing the citizenry to be prepared for military service whenever the situation would call for it. But moving on out of the Polish situation, we have also been able to hear inside the Kursk region that it appears that the Russians are running into some issues pushing the Ukrainians out. Fiber optic drones have actually been a massive benefit and a massive boon for the Russian counteroffensive efforts in Kursk, as they have been able to cut through Ukrainian anti-drone jamming and also Ukrainian anti-drone defenses, largely due to the fact that their connection cannot really be severed unless the fiber optic is severed. However, there are starting to be problems that are arising with this. So many FPV drones of the fiber optic variety have been used by the Russians that they're now getting snagged on other fiber optic cables left behind by other drones. This one actually hit the fiber optic you can see right there and exploded in the middle of the air, not even close to a target, because of all of the fiber optics that are now laying through the tree lines because of the continuous drone operations that they've conducted. Fiber optic cables are starting to become a significant issue on both ends. The sheer amount of fiber optic lines that are laid out across the landscape are starting to impede vehicle activities in some areas and are also starting to impede drone activities in most areas as well. We have also been able to see that the Ukrainian FPV drones even still are continuing to hit Russian forces inside of Kursk. We can see them hitting this one Russian on a tree right here. This one isn't a fiber optic, by the way. but it just appears that he was chilling, and it appears that he is chilling no longer. But moving on from
That
that,
looked like a fake wax figure or something. That guy didn't even look real.
dude, he was already so ready for it. He was Madame Tussauds. But anyways, moving on from that and out of the Kursk region, it is time for us to move on into our location unknowns. We were able to see a kamikaze drone hitting a group of Russian soldiers. We can see this in this clip right here. And we can see the drone coming on in, and that's quite a large group of Russians. Actually, that's like an entire platoon, and it looks like they slammed right down in the middle of them.
How are they just going to race down the entire line of Russians just hanging out in one spot?
Dude, they like took their pick of them. They were like, that's a decent group right back there. Hit about a fire team worth of them probably. And we can see the explosion here on this drone camera as well, confirming the hit. And it does appear that that might have been a lack of Russian preparation. Meanwhile, we also got to see the Russians taking a brisk walk. Observe. And a brisk walk it was indeed.
Holy cow!
They just to put it to y'all in a way that would make sense. Them bitches be stepping on mines. But moving on from that and into the locations unknowns, and into the Russian casualty report, we were able to see the Russian losses.
No!
Holy moly!
Oh no! 0 Bobcats today. That's a damn shame. Someone hyped me up and gassed me up in the comments, saying that the Bobcat losses were crazy. They told me misinformation, but the other losses are insanely high, though. Damn, look at the UAV losses and stuff. But Miss Disa has a note, so tell us more, Enforcer.
I gotta say, Miss DC, keeper of the records, is always out here keeping them brisk records. And Miss DC, keeper of the records, stated that 96 artillery systems is the second highest daily loss of the war. The biggest one was yesterday. 258 drones is a new high record loss. Very nice to hear. And 166 supply trucks is the 8th highest daily loss. So we actually were hitting records in some extents today in some loss categories. And here are the losses in detail. 1,210 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 20 armored personnel carriers, 166 supply trucks, 9 main battle tanks, 96 artillery pieces, 258 drones, 3 MLRSs, and that was it. But nevertheless, it was a very impressive thing to see, and we love to know that the Russian Federation is continuing to take significant losses time and time again. And so with that, we are now going to be moving on from our casualty report and on into Russia really quickly, because we were able to hear that Russia was under a drone attack as we were going live. Once again, we haven't gotten a lot of details or information about this, but these red arrows are showing the attack paths of the drones that were launched several hours ago. We also were able to hear down within the area of the city, and I want to make sure that we get it correct, of Kavkazskaya, that the fires are still cooking down here, and cooking quite warmly. This is about the 4th day that the oil depot fire, or the oil pipeline fire, has continued within this area, and it appears that the Russians have no hopes of putting out the fire at this time, and they're now having to let it burn out naturally on its own. Moving on to the Ukrainian front lines within the northern area near to the city of Svatove, we were able to see the Ukrainian armed forces with the samurai drones hitting super cams. Now we can see the super cams are about to get hit. And that camera be super.
4K, like super resolution, bliat, but we have a super focus, as you can see. They're going to go in and smash. Like Chris's mom.
Oh! Shots fired! Oh! Call him back up! Oh!
Look, they wrote something on it. What does that say? Does anybody know what that says?
That says, Born Cruz. I actually don't know what that says. But anyways, wait a minute, hang on. I think it's the Russian word for Valkyrie. Yeah. They set it up there. I'm blind. I didn't read that.
There we go.
I saw the word Valkyrie. I didn't see the word inscription. Sorry, everyone. I read really quickly and sometimes just miss the entire sentences. But that says Valkyrie in Russian. So interesting. But moving on from that and down towards the closer area, the Severonsky Forest, we did get to see a Ukrainian drone dropping a bomb into this little outpost here, and it had some interesting results. Russians hate them. See how the Ukrainians sent this entire outpost up with one simple trick. We see a Russian right over there in the corner.
Oh, they landed to lure him out. That's interesting.
We now see a meme. I don't know what that meme is. Like, I've never seen this one before. We're going to move on from the meme. I just don't know how that plays in. But we can see the Russian coming out and grabbing his drone.
Oh no.
Oh no. Oh no. That wasn't a good move. They also have a C4 taped to the tree. That actually wasn't a C4. It looked like one, but it wasn't a C4. I think it was like an anti-drone sort of a system. But oh my god.
Damn. No way.
Damn.
Oh, it started a little forest fire too.
Damn, son, where'd you grill this? It's like apparently a gas fire. That outpost is gone. It's just embroiled in a gas. Oh my lord. There are explosions going on in there. I've never seen something like this in quite some time.
Man, that's crazy. I think that fire's going to get out of control, actually.
So when the orcs are cooked, we call them bacon, right?
I mean, you can. I mean, you can.
Man, those orcs are as crispy as bacon as this meme plays again. We're moving on from the meme. I don't really know how it actually plays into that. But moving on from that and into Sperony, we also got to see the Ukrainians hitting more Russian drones, this time of the Zala variety. Zala, Zala, zing, Zala, bing.
These little Zalas look so cheap. Like, that propeller looks like it's just like the cheapest thing ever.
Man, it really does look cheap. It looks incredibly cheap. Moving on from that and into Kramatorsk, we also got to see that unfortunately the Russians were shelling Kramatorsk, although there was a server error on that one. We weren't able to recover the file. Moving on from that and down into the town of Toretsk, we also got to see the Russians getting slammed down here. Oh!
Oh, and they took out the Pantheon. Look at that.
The Pantheon?
Yeah. Whoa.
Aw, man. I believe in consensually talking to pantheons. Aw, man.
Whoa. Look at that boiler.
Man, I think that might actually be an electrical substation.
It could be. This is payback for what they did in Britain.
Get him, governor! Get him!
You know, smash him right where it counts, Gavin. He goes right to the substation and let them have it.
Man, and they were letting them have it. Also, this is the same clip again. They were able to knock out a peon within that area. But moving on from that and down into Donetsk, we also got to see the Donetsk airport from a helicopter's view 11 years after the Battle of Donetsk Airport ended. And we see Donetsk Airport down there, and it still looks like a abandoned hellscape, like it was in the original battle. And Pele Smith said, I hate the is this live question. I'm not going to lie, I've never actually said anything about it on air. I hate that question as well, because there's a giant red live button on our thumbnail when the stream is live. Like, I don't know if people are blind and they don't see that, but, like, I don't know why people always come in here and go, is this even live? It's like, well, no shit, it's live. It's like, it's live. Like, it's like, there's, like, it's live. That answers the question. But I've never understood why people ask that, Pele. Like, honestly, though, like, in the words of that, in the words of Mr. Fox News, F it, we'll do it live! We'll do it live! But moving on from that and on into the western area of Bekrovsk, we also got to see a video from United 24. And we actually have time for this one tonight, believe it or not. We have time. And we were able to see 24 hours with the 68th Jaeger Brigade. They were sitting back there knocking Jägermeisters back like no other. Check it out.
The most I've evacuated is 13 people.
The Russians haven't stopped, you know, shelling all around us, including with cabs, tanks, and all sort of, you know, projectile.
We've entered Pokrovsk the night before with a unit from the 68th Jaeger Brigade, manning an SPG, a Soviet-made recoilless gun. Their position is a basement.
He meant an SPG-9. He said an SPG. Like, I was like,
that dude got all fancy there. I was like, what the hell is he talking about? An SPG?
Yeah, bro, he's talking about the bourgeoisie, the petit bourgeoisie. Like,
SPG.
All fancy. I thought he had a whole new term for us there for a minute.
So, let me go pull it up for y'all. It's an SPG-9. It's this thing. It's a recoilless gun. But he said an SPG, and like, I was gonna let it slide, man. You like made sure to harp on it, but that's what he was saying. But he didn't say it in the English way. He said it in the English Ukrainian way, I suppose. But anyways.
A Soviet-made recoilless gun. Their position is a basement in some abandoned building close to the city between 1.5 and 2 kilometers to the Russians. We're as near to the enemy's positions as possible to hit them without endangering the team. The crew is constantly on alert for drone sounds as artillery blasts get closer. The unit's SPG, hidden not far from the cellar, is designed to destroy tanks, self-propelled artillery and other light armored vehicles up to 6 kilometers with 73mm projectiles. They're not precisely mortars, but the same kind of crew is manning them. Nimitz, the unit's commander, checks some coordinates, draws to pass the time, and sets up his removable deep compass, a crucial part to aim correctly.
Without it, the gun won't shoot. We adjust it like that. It must be attached to the weapon itself, and is specially calibrated to work in sync with it. A good hit can cause more damage than an FPV. It's pretty convenient. Load it, aim it on command, that's it. I think the Russians really fear a skilled gunner who knows how to work with this weapon. There are no feelings, no pity, nothing like that. I wish them the worst of the worst. The worst things that can be wished to someone who has attacked or invaded our land, our territory. We're at home. I have no pity, nothing.
He's got nothing. He's cold-blooded.
So, this is right now the further, and will go before orders to go out, because as you can see, it's very bright outside. And I'm not sure if you hear that, but yeah, there's a lot going on outside.
Bro, I heard him gulping a lot of
Night has fallen. We hide near
Dude, he went, like,
He did a Scooby-Doo gulp.
an abandoned building waiting for the car to pick us up. And behind another building. While we wait, a buzzing sound approaches. It's a drone, and not Ukrainian.
and they kind of loud. Like, why don't they ask you to turn it down?
It stands over us for seconds that feel like an eternity. Bombs keep falling around. By the sound of it, grads and cabs, a few in a row. When the car arrives, it is time to run again and jump in. We drive off. We're not safe yet, but we are far from the danger faced by the guys who will have to spend another 2 days in this freezing cellar to try and keep the Russians at bay. New day, same 68 Jaeger Brigade and in the same Pokrovsk direction, but a different unit. It's time for us to meet a crew in charge of US-made Max Pro armored vehicle to understand how they use them on the battlefield in this area of the Donetsk region.
It's used for things like transporting infantry to positions, evacuating infantry from positions, engaging the enemy, and during assault actions. For example, in enemy positions, there's a Browning 12.7mm machine gun with a gunner to engage the target. Well, usually, there are 6 people, and some from the other rotation. So we can bring in 7 people. During the evacuations, it depends on how many people there are. The most I've evacuated is 13 people.
The Max Pro was first used by the US in Afghanistan.
This is why American Max Pros are the best in the world.
Exactly.
The US delivered roughly 400 to Ukraine so far. They can weigh up to 14 tons and are pretty easy to use, thanks to the straightforward panels inside, the soldiers from this brigade tell us.
Aw, man, I was driving a truck, I would know. Aw, man.
The Max Pro is an MRAP, a mine-resistant vehicle. They had to adapt it with some electronic warfare system to avoid being spotted by Russian FPVs as much as possible. But drones swarm here.
These are from shrapnel. Well, yes. They also were torn off, and then they were patched up. Here, this is from an FPV. In terms of quality, the vehicle is quite good, powerful and solid. The only downside is that it's a bit too tall, so enemies can spot it from a distance.
Hey, you got to worry about it anyway. The thing's a mobile tank, basically, so it doesn't matter if they spot you. Let them take a few shots. It can take it.
Man, Russians be spotting the milk van from a mile away. Bro, but they ain't delivering milk. They delivering straight up lead. Like out of this thing, like it's a great vehicle.
Which direction is the hardest, Kharkiv or Pokrovsk?
Here,
Why?
well, the fighting is more intense here. Plus, there's involvement with drones. In Kharkiv, this wasn't the case. There were battles, but no drones. The Russians stormed our positions a lot in the summer.
And now, are things stable?
More or less. They keep coming, but not as much at least.
As winter disappears and spring comes, Russian assaults will undoubtedly become more frequent, but the men seem ready to hold them off.
That's the end of that clip, but it was a very interesting one and a cool look into the 93rd Brigades, the famous fighting 93rd, mind you, and their Max Bros. But moving on from that and further down the line into the southern front, we also got to see an AMX-10 RC with a cope cage on top of it. Very rare to see an AMX-10 at all, much less with a cope cage, so I thought I'd show that to y'all because it was just kind of neat. But moving on out of that and on even further down into the front lines, it's now time for us to move on up into Kyiv to talk about the air defense report, as we were able to see that last night 179 drones attacked Ukraine, 100 of them were shot down, and another 63 were intercepted with electronic warfare measures, meaning that only 16 drones made it through out of 179, which means that the interception rate was well above 90% and was getting incredibly close to the 95th and 96th percentiles. But moving on out of that, it's now time for us to get on into the question segment. Many people are wondering, wait a minute, I thought we had a speech from President Zelensky. No, we didn't. This was his latest speech. It appears that there was no other. And so for this reason, we're going to be moving straight into the question segment. No questions asked. I'm sorry if you have to pee, Matthew. Sadly, Zelensky doesn't care about your bladder, and you will have to wait.
Ooh, me?
Ooh, me? Honestly, man, I kind of want to get a drink of water or something right now, and it hurts me when we don't have a speech because I'm like, man, there's no restroom breaks or water breaks or anything. Man, I'm telling you, man, we need to unionize. This is unfair how our employer treats us.
Hey, look, go get you a drink of water if you want. I'll filibuster for a minute, sort of go over this poll and get my opinion if you want to go and, get in there and get some water or something real quick.
Oh, for real?
Yeah. Go right ahead, man. I'll just hold it down. I'm holding it down.
Man, P.O.P., hold it down. All right, man, I'm going to get some water. And I'll be right back. But in the meantime, though, I will segue us into this interesting poll, because we do have a very interesting poll from Warsaw. And Poland has deployed over 11,000 troops to the Belarus border amidst and will Belarus escalate? And it seems as though many are saying that Belarus will conduct an escalation. Others are saying that Belarus will ignore this shift. I missed the F there the first time. Poland is getting too carried away, some others are saying, and others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are you thinking about it, and what is everyone else thinking about it?
All right. So with this massive deployment of about 11,000 troops from Poland's military to the Belarusian border, which is, by the way, a very big movement of troops, will Belarus escalate? That's the question. So 47% said yes, Belarus will do an escalation, while 35% said no, Belarus will ignore this shift, and 6% said Poland is getting too carried away. And honestly, considering the fact that Russia is still aggressing on Ukraine, they're really not negotiating in good faith. I would say that Poland is certainly not getting carried too much away. I would say they're actually doing what's necessary at the moment. So to the question of Belarus escalating or not, I think they probably will do something, because, of course, when this many troops get put on a border, usually countries will react to it. Whether or not it's justified or not is another question. But I'm actually with the 47%. I think Belarus will do an escalation of some sort, probably by matching this troop deployment on their border and on their side to basically even things out a bit. So I'm with the, not really majority, but I'm with the 47%. But if the enforcer is back and he's gotten some nice aqua, it is now his turn to say some things about the poll. So, enforcer, are you back?
It is my turn, and I have the talking stick, and it's time for me to answer the poll, or more importantly, give my opinion on the poll, which is the deciding factor to what people's opinions are and whether they're right or wrong. And I'm just kidding, by the way. No answer is a wrong answer, really. But beyond that, I would say that Belarus will most likely conduct an escalation in response to this. We've already seen in the past that the Belarusian armed forces have started to build defensive positions around the city of Grodno, and we've also seen that as well around the city of Brest. And I would believe at this point, I know a lot of people are about to say, he said Brest. I know, I just realized that when I named off the town. I should have called it Brest-Litovsk, so that way it would sound a little bit more bougie, but I didn't get that chance. I screwed that up. But beyond that, there most likely will be some sort of a response by the Belarusians, and we'll most likely see a militarization of the border on both sides. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. But with that, it is time for us to start moving on into those questions. But before we do, I have to say, really quickly, that it is wild to see the viewership that we've gotten tonight. We have not had a stream this highly viewed in a hot minute. And not only that, we've gained about 100 or so subscribers from the stream so far, which is also pretty shocking as well. And I got to think,
what brought y'all in tonight in these type of numbers right here? Like, can we have one spokesperson for this group of viewers tonight? What brought y'all in? Because I'm curious, because the news was obviously, we had big pieces of news to cover, but like it. Why didn't we have this viewership last night? Because last night's news was, I think, a little crazier than tonight's news.
It was, honestly. And interesting enough, to give y'all a comparison here between last night and tonight, because this is what's kind of shocking about it, kind of shocking really, is that last night we reached a peak viewership of 9.6 thousand people. Tonight it was 10.9. So I don't know what brought people in. Like, I'll be entirely honest, I was really surprised by that. I didn't expect tonight to be an incredibly big night. But what brought y'all in? Was it the title? Was it the thumbnail? What was it? I'm not going to lie, that thumbnail was busting, though, today. That thing took me about an hour to make. I'm not even exaggerating on that one. That one was a long amount of time to make, because there was a lot of work that had to be put into it. So if you were brought in because of the flashy looking thumbnail, I thank you for that, because it's validating the work I put into this thing, because there was a lot of it, an insanely high amount of it. So if you came for that, thank you. Thank you greatly. If you came for some other reason, why? Why did you come here? You don't belong here. You need to leave. I'm just kidding, by the way. You're completely welcome here. Any of y'all are. But still, I'm very interested in that. But I do have to thank everyone so far, because we've gotten 72,000 views on the stream in just 2 hours, which usually is the amount of views that we get on a stream by the time we're rounding it out, or about a couple hours after we've rounded out a stream. I don't know what brought y'all in, but I thank you all for being here tonight and watching the stream, because we were highly honored to know that so many people have been enjoying our news coverage for the day. So with that, Matthew, take it away. What do we got?
All right, so I'm beginning to see what brought people in. It looks like most people were saying the news about Poland brought people in. Very interesting. I actually told that to the enforcer before the stream really got started. I said, I think the Poland news might be bringing the folks in, and it looks like I might have been correct on that. What's interesting is there's certain topics that always hit the algorithm. Poland seems to be one of them, and I won't talk about the other ones because I don't want to give away the secret sauce to any of our fellow hot dog people that might be watching and want to copy something that we're doing. So we'll have to leave it to them, because they probably don't have the brain cells to figure it out, to be honest with you. So we'll have to leave it a mystery, so they can sit over there and keep wondering why they're not getting viewers. But anyways, we are now moving on to our super chats once again. And this first one is going to go to none other than E. Johnson. And thank you very much, E. Johnson, for that $30 support and helping keep the channel running. And we do appreciate that. He said, Zelensky should say Ukraine will have free and fair elections as soon as Russia agrees to have free and fair elections as well. It will never happen. And Putin is an illegitimate leader.
Oh man, that's a pretty good one, actually. I actually would agree with that. The thing is, though, is that life is always more complicated than that. I would say that that's a great one, though, on just the face of it, because everyone knows that Russian elections are a sham. But if the United States wanted to be a real stickler, they could just claim that Russian elections are legitimate, and that would be the end of it. And then it's back to Ukraine needs to have an election. Which is a little stupid, because then it's like, well, elections are becoming really subjective at that point, whether they're legitimate or not. It's like, what if Zelensky just ran a rigged election at that point where you'd win by 90% like Putin does? And it's like, what do we do then? Do we call it fake because we didn't like the results, or do we call it legitimate, although we clearly know that it was faked? It's like, what do we do at that point? And that's honestly a question for the ages, because I don't know what we would do at that point with what's currently going on. But that's kind of the difficult thing about it, is that people can just come up with whatever they want it to be, at least in those kinds of instances. But to be honest with you, at the face of it, knowing the truth and knowing what you and I know, I would entirely agree the elections would never happen at that point, because Russia has never had a fair and honest election throughout its entire history. And that's crazy. Like, that's actually a true statement. Throughout the entire history of Russia, or the Russian people that have existed there, since the inception of a Russian state, there has never been an actual election, or an election that's been fair. like for over 1,000 years. That is crazy, man, when you think about it. Before that, it was a feudal system, so they didn't have elections. After that, during the time of the Soviet Union, they had supposed elections, but they weren't really elections. They were rigged. And then in the modern day Russian Federation, it's the very same thing. The elections are still rigged, and there's no such thing as an actual fair election. So it's crazy to think about that, man. It's one of the few countries on earth, I would say, or think of, where you can actually say that there's never been a fair democratically held election in the history of their nation over 1,000 years.
It's just crazy to me how the Russian people and the Russian society as a whole has been so accustomed and also conditioned to accept the corruption that's been in place in their country for so long that they just accept whatever the case is. Like I would imagine that most people in Russia know that the elections are not free and fair. Obviously, they don't say that out loud, because if they did that, they'd be sent to the nearest gulag and end up probably like Navalny very quickly. But they probably know that deep down, and they just simply can't vocalize it. But they really don't care, though. It's a weird thing. Like, they may know it, but they really don't care very much, because they can't ever assemble any type of resistance to this force that keeps taking over the Russian government, which is Putin's thugs and gang at this point. They never assemble any resistance. It's not allowed to take place, or either they don't have the willpower to take down that government either. So it's obvious that the Putin regime doesn't benefit them. So you'd think at some point they would have enough and get fed up, but they simply don't. Because I think it's because of all that conditioning over the many, many decades. They're just not, ready to do anything about it.
I would say so. Generally, though, the Russian government has always had a way through the empire, the union, and the federation to create some form of a system where they're able to put down any attempted dissent fairly quickly. Even back in the day before the Soviet Union existed, the Russian Empire had a group called the Cheka that would go around and check people. Like, that was their job. Like, the Cheka meant something else in Russian, but I always joke around that the Cheka was checking folks, and they pretty much were. They were like the FSB of their day during the Russian Empire, and if they ever heard of anyone wanting to do any harm to the Tsar or overthrow the Tsarist government, they pretty much would do the exact same things that the KGB and the FSB do, or the NKVD, which was the predecessor to the KGB in the time of the Soviet Union. But with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least the best I can. And I think you want to give your support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to none other than Marion Demert, who's, of course, another longtime channel legend. And thank you very much, Marion, for that $30 support and also helping to keep the channel running. We do appreciate it. Marion said, I love being back. And also, we're glad to have you back, by the way. They said, Slava Ukraine and Hiram Slava.
And welcome back, Marion Deemer. And we are glad to have you back. We hope that you've been enjoying it here tonight. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because it has always been folks like you, old guards of the channel, who've stuck through with this channel through thick and thin, through good times and bad times, as we've continued to cover the news. And I got to thank you so much for still being here and supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. And so with that, Slava Ukraini, Hurram Slava, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I saw a very interesting statement someone made in the chat, which actually made me think for a second. I was like, I wonder if that actually is the case. Because obviously, like I said, I think some people in Russia know that Putin is not freely and fairly elected. I think actually a pretty good chunk of them probably know that. But someone said maybe it's because Putin is charismatic and they really just overlook everything else because he is charismatic. And that's a question that I have. Me personally, I don't view Putin as being charismatic. But at the same time, though, he speaks Russian. So I really can't understand the mannerisms and things like that that the Russian people might see in him. But he does not appear to be charismatic. He seems very cold. He seems like he really is honestly kind of short of words, actually. Doesn't say very much when it comes to inspirational statements, per se. And of course, he is surrounded by corruption nonstop. So I don't see the charisma there, me personally. But maybe the Russian people see it. But what do y'all think in the audience about that? Does Putin, putting everything else aside, obviously what he's doing in Ukraine is horrific. But just as a leader, looking at it from a vacuum, does he have charisma from a political standpoint? I would say no. But Enforcer, what do you think?
He does, actually. We don't see it, but the Russian people see it. It's because the propaganda efforts to make Putin look like a nice guy don't really expand out of Russia too much, actually. The Russians have a very interesting kind of propaganda initiative that they work, and the propaganda initiative that they have within their borders is completely different than the one that they project outwards of their borders. Putin actually is considered very charismatic by the Russian public because they do a lot to prop up his image. You know, Matthew, in America, when they bring, like, a kid, like, and I'll be honest with y'all, I really hate when, like, politicians use kids to try and make themselves look a little bit better. Like, for example, there's been a little bit of a recent example of one, but every single president has done it in the modern day. Because what looks better than a president caring about the kids? Like, no president gives a damn about the kids or the kid they're talking to, but it looks good for the cameras. But they don't really publicize that too much here in America, and if they do, it generally doesn't receive that much great praise. In Russia, though, because I'll let you all know, I actually studied the Russian Federation a great deal before the war in Ukraine even began, as well as Ukraine itself for years. And there is a very interesting kind of thing that happens in Russia with their propaganda. Putin will go around, man, to like children's hospitals, and they make this a national televised thing. He'll go into a children's hospital, and there'll be a kid in there who's like got no legs, and the kid will be like, I would like to walk again. And Putin would be like, of course you would, my child, and I care for all of the children of the Russian Federation greatly. It's one of my greatest concerns. And that is why I am personally spending my own money to give you 2 legs so you can walk. And the child will go, thank you, Vladimir Putin, you are like a legend to me. And Putin will go, of course, my child, but it is really you who are the legend for going through all of your suffering. And then he'll wander off, and then he'll go to another guy. Like they make it a huge deal, though, in Russia, this propaganda side of things with him.
But isn't that like the normal like politician playbook? Like that's something that all politicians do. Like for example, they know the power of children. Like obviously, if you're looking at it from a very, I guess you could say, sociopathic perspective, going and having some type of public event where there's cameras around and you're doing something very nice for a child, you'll rarely find anybody that says, "Oh, screw that kid! Like that kid doesn't deserve nothing." Most people care about children, so that's like a winner for a politician right there. Go to the children's hospital and say something nice about the kid and try to do something nice for the kid. That seems like it's something that every politician does. And generally, I don't see anything that really Putin is doing that's exceptionally different than any other politician anywhere else around the world. He goes and does these things, like, for example, he puts himself on video to look more masculine. He'll take his shirt off and try to ride these horses and do these things that he probably didn't do normally, but he's doing them for the camera to appear more likable. That's basically what everybody does. But not every single U.S. president is charismatic, though. Not every single one is. But for some reason, apparently, the Russian people view him as charismatic based on what I'm understanding.
Well, actually, man, like I'm just touching the surface. There is loads that I could add. Like we can make it like a 2-hour like episode talking about the kind of propaganda they make about Putin, because they elevate Putin to the level of like being the father of Russia. He's like this paternal figure that they try and portray to the Russian people. He never hurts a single Russian. Never would dare to. He is the guy, the problem solver. He helps everyone. He just loves the Russian people. Like it's insane, man. I've seen endless clips of it. He'll go to a place like a dairy farm, and he'll go and eat yogurt with them, and he'll be like, you know, how much is this yogurt priced? And they'll be like, it costs this many rubles. He'll be like, that is like 20% below the market price in Russia, and it also tastes delicious. We need to make sure that everyone in the Russian Federation is able to get this delicious kind of yogurt, because I want to make sure that they have the best quality for it. And they make it a huge deal. Like I know you're going to say that sounds normal, but you have to remember, man, the Russian government runs the media. Like in America, the media, the mainstream media at least, is run to some extent with some indirect government control, just to be completely honest with y'all. But in Russia, the entire thing is run with government control. So they take it and they run with it. There's no opposition to Putin in the media. It's just, look at him. He cares for the Russians so much. He provides cheaper yogurt, better tasting yogurt. That's how much he cares for y'all. He wants you to even have a good tasting yogurt. Like those kinds of things. And it's just overly done. There's no dissing him over there.
That I think that is true, but if you look way, way, way back at the beginning of when Putin first came to power, and he was unknown at that point, nobody really knew who Putin was. He just some random guy that showed up, and all of a sudden he took control of everything, which was kind of whack with the way that happened. But he showed up, and originally, in my opinion, he seemed like he was not the same guy he is today. Obviously, he's had a lot more experience since the first time he took charge. But when he first took charge, he was extremely not charismatic. Like, he had no charisma in the very beginning. Like, I will say confidently, I did not see any ounce of charisma in him at the very beginning. So, they've tried to paint the image through propaganda over time that he's charismatic. And in my opinion, I would still say they haven't done a good job of that. It's very fake and forced, in my opinion. But at the beginning, you got to agree that guy had no charisma. Like, he looked like a ghoul, and he just didn't really do or say anything. Actually,
man, he looked like a goblin. Man, he looked like freaking Smeagol. Like, let's see, Putin. Let me go see if I can get a picture from him when he was like president earlier on. That's a picture of him from 2024. But we want to find a picture of him from the early. Golly, he looked rough even in like the 80s. Like, he looked like a gremlin.
Yeah, there's some like worse ones that are in color where he really looks like a ghoul. There's one of them right there. Yeah, see, it's real ghoulish looking.
Man, he was the FSB director in 1998. It's always interesting how the intelligence folks always end up becoming the leader of countries, you know, like, yeah, well, we won't touch on that too much, but, oh.
Yeah, this ghoul, just a pure ghoul. Now, I don't see any charisma in that individual looking at him in that picture. And also when he spoke around this time, around the 2000s, no charisma. Like, just very straightforward, bland, and cold.
Hold up. I found another one.
Oh, damn. Gollum.
Man, it's Golem from Lord of the Rings. He kind of looks like him, though. But yeah, he wasn't really charismatic at the start. But that's how it always starts, Matthew, with these dictators. They are never charismatic when they start out, but they build a cult of personality around them where people generally like them. You know, like the Kims. Like, most North Koreans actually do believe that the Kim family is this great, loving family of people who actually care for the Koreans. You know, like, they actually do believe that because that's all they've been told. And Russia tries to do that as much as they can with Putin. And so a lot of Russians actually do look at him positively. That's also another reason why, if y'all look at it, when the Russian units mutiny, they still look at Putin as like this like righteous person. Have you noticed that, Matthew? How they'll be like, the Russian army is a piece of shit, and that's why we appeal to the great Putin, because we know he will hear us and he will listen to our cries and he will help us. You know, like, they always do that because
That's just a fear response.
well, you know, well, I mean, if you're mutinying, man, how fearful can you be? I mean, like, you know, it's like you're already going against the system.
Well, I think those guys are hoping that maybe those get the top guys and leave the bottom smaller guys alone, and they're still trying to give themselves some leeway. They don't want to go all the way. They're not quite that cold-blooded, so they're going to sort of like ride the fence a bit.
Maybe, but still, at least in Russia internally, they try and portray Putin as a good guy. That's pretty much the whole point of what I'm trying to say. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Philip Lamebull that puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Philip, for that $20 support, and we appreciate that very much as well.
Hey!
And Philip said, very simply, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Philip, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it rolling. And so a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than Jocelyn White, who's a longtime channel legend as well. And thank you very much, Josh, for that $20 support. And it's good to see you once again. And thank you very much for helping to keep the channel running. And I said, thank you both for another informative night of news. And take a question from the chat and LLT LSA.
And thank you for enjoying the news. And thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't have been able to make it reality for so many years at this point. And believe it or not, folks, I forgot to mention this, but tomorrow, the 23rd of March, is LSA Day. That is right. The Lee Spring Army will be celebrating its 3rd anniversary of existence. Isn't that crazy? And it'll be tomorrow on the Sunday night fundraiser. So I hope y'all are all here tomorrow, because it will be something. It really will be something. The 3rd anniversary of the LSA. Who would have ever thought it would come around? But it's finally come around, and it's nigh time for it. And so, with that, I hope I reminded you all of that. I completely forgot to tell you all about that leading up to the day of, but it's here. It is here indeed, finally, once and for all. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, Matthew, did we get the live chat?
We will be grabbing a live chat question now, and this one goes to none other than, let's see here. This one goes to the real hot dog man, who says, if the U.S. ever left NATO and went to war with each other, who do you think would win, and how long do you think it would last?
It's a pretty fairly matched fight at that point, to be entirely honest, in terms of GDP, military power, at least at the outset. In terms of air power projection and ground forces, navally, the United States would have the advantage. So I'll be entirely honest, I think that would almost end in a stalemate, because most of that war would be fought in the Atlantic, and if the United States ever tried to invade Europe, it probably wouldn't end up well, and if Europe ever tried to counter and invade the United States, that probably wouldn't end up too well either. So it would be a pretty long, drawn-out slugfest that I honestly would say would probably end in a stalemate. So with that, I hope that addresses that somewhat well, and a very interesting live chat. And I thank you once again for support and sponsoring a live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Tenzin Norbu, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much as well, Tenzin, for that $20 support. They said, you guys are awesome, and thanks for all the work you do almost every day to produce a very informative show. And I like your humor too, and ha ha ha. And thank you very much, Tenzin, for the kind words. We do appreciate it.
And thank you so much, Tenzin, for the support as well. And thank you for the kind words. I'm glad that you enjoy our humor. Like, some people complained about our humor. Nah, but, those are just the detractors. And I got to thank you so much for enjoying. I got to thank you so much for the kind words, because we put in a decent amount of work into this every single day. Once again, I do want to apologize, though. Big sorry to everyone for not having a short war summary out for the past 2 days. News has been a little stale at this point. Well, not really stale, but really slow in the middle of the day for the large part at this point, so we haven't had a lot to cover, but hopefully we will starting tomorrow, so that we can once again get out short war summaries for all of y'all and let y'all know what's going on out there. But beyond that, I do have to say a thank you. A thank you for the kind words and the support, because folks like you help this channel to keep on running, Tenzin, and if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality and keep it rolling. And so a huge thanks to you once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Ken Hanley, who puts in a 20, and thank you very much, Ken, for that $20 support. Also, we do appreciate that very much. He said, World War III, I want my chocolate milk and the Enforcers.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for wanting the Enforcer channel in the middle of World War III. People got their priorities straight. When the World War kicks off, you got to be watching this channel. It's just the rules. I don't make the rules, but I sure as hell enforce them. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and the kind words. And I got to say, chocolate milk sounds pretty good right about now. I'm actually getting fairly hungry, and I believe that we will probably be making a food run after this stream. Not a big one, but a food run. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. At least the best I can. At least the best I can. And hey, that's the best we can do, you know what I mean? But still, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Glock, who's there, LSA, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Mr. Glock, for the support once again and the helping to keep the LSA running. And he said, since Russia's economy is almost only war-based, he said, if they stop the war now, then the Russian economy would totally collapse. And what say you, Enforcers? And I would say, Mr. Glock, you're 100% correct. I would say I've been saying that for actually almost a month now. I've been saying that Putin is in between a rock and a hard place right now. If he stops the war, the economy is going to go. If he keeps the war going and makes the U.S. president, look like he was telling not necessarily the truth about Putin wanting to actually have a peace, then the U.S. president is probably going to slap sanctions on Russia anyway, and then the Russian economy is going to fall apart then as well. So between those two options there, Putin is probably thinking in his head, let's keep the war going and see what happens, because that's probably the best route, because either way I go, I'm screwed. So that's my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd say, in my opinion, I'd agree. I think the Russian Federation's economy is screwed at this point, because there's really no way for them to convert back into a peacetime economy from their wartime economy. It usually would be possible, but with how their supply chains and infrastructure works, if they continue on the war, the sanctions will probably last after the war, which means that there is no influx of raw materials to create more consumer goods with, and so they pretty much implode at that point. So I do believe that they probably will be suffering an economic collapse at this point, regardless of how the war goes. And so with that, thank you once again for supporting and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. And a very good question for sure. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, real quick flash poll. The question says, is Vladimir Putin generally regarded as charismatic, regardless of what you think of his actions? 68% said no, and 32% said yes. So most people think it's no. Honestly, I'd be within the no's. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say no. In Russia, I would say yes. But outside the Russian Federation and in the rest of the world, I would have to say no. He's not charismatic. I honestly think the guy's a buffoon. And also, everything that he does is so fake and forced. It's literally like that press conference, Matthew, where they're like, excuse me, can you tell us about the hypersonic missile? And then the press secretary is like, actually, hold up, I'm getting a call on my phone. Hello? And then you can hear on the phone, yes, make sure not to tell them about the hypersonic missile that flew at Mach 10 over 200 miles of Ukraine and slammed dead into a target and absolutely destroyed it. That would be absolutely terrible if you told them, and that's highly classified. Do you understand? Yes, I do understand that I cannot tell them about the Mach 10 missile that flew 200 miles over Ukraine and absolutely destroyed their territory. I'll make sure not to tell them that. Okay, thank you, bye, click. And it's like as fake as that. Like, everything that Putin does is really fake when you watch it. Like, the way he acts even is so fake. It's curated for the cameras. And it's so forced you can tell it. Like, they'll be sitting there and they'll be like, here's this yogurt. And he'd be like, This is so delicious, and I care for the Russian people so greatly. When I taste this yogurt, I taste it for all of Russia. Let me taste. It is so delicious. I think that all of Russia must have this, for I love the Russian people, and I think that they should do very well, and they should have a great prosperity in life and have a delicious yogurt to go with it as well. It's 20% cheaper than the market average, and I believe that we'll have to introduce this for the entirety of the Russian people because I love them so. And it's like, wow, it's just so fake. Like, you couldn't even make it up. You know, you couldn't be faker if you asked. So I would have to give my answer to that. Yes, he's very fake. I'd have to be with 70%. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I'm going to cover this real quick. China just did something here. And once again, remember that China has been accused of cutting undersea, deep sea cables for the last couple of months. They've been accused of that. And also, we've seen some normal vessels, which appear to be maybe shadow fleet vessels of the Chinese or the Russians doing this type of sabotage. So the Chinese just unveiled a powerful deep sea cable cutter that could, once again, chop through even the most armored undersea cables. And they've admitted to testing it. And they also say that the thing is ready to go, and they've proven its efficacy. And it is a device that works perfectly, actually, according to what they're saying. So very interesting that they just revealed that after they've been accused of doing this for months. And it looks like they're now using that as a indirect threat against the West. So, Enforcer, what say you?
Sounds to me like they got the snipper out there at work. And I tell you this, Matthew, I tell you this. I think that clearly shows that they've been sabotaging some undersea cables.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was their message of basically sort of owning up to it without directly saying it.
Man, we oughta come out in the U.S. and go, hey, look, we got this special thing called the Three Gorges Dam Annihilator. Kind of cool, right? like we ought to do that instead, man. It's like, dude, Xi Jinping, dude, he would sit there for the first time ever, and that stupid smug look would be off of his face if we announced that one. I would get a laugh out of that if we did that. Where is the Three Gorges Dam, anyways, on the Yangtze? Where is it? Let's see. This is the Yangtze, right? No, that's not. Where in the hell? Where in the world is the Yangtze? Let me go just type it in. Three Gorges Dam. Where was it? I was not even close. That is very deep into China. Let's see here. I'm not going to lie, man. The reservoir of this thing isn't even that big.
It's really not, honestly. It's actually kind of underwhelming.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of like, also, I love the sewer shit flying out of the spillways there into the chocolate river from Willy Wonka's factory. Really a beautiful sight. But look at this dam. I mean, wow.
Man.
It's amazing.
The Three Gorges Dam, also known as Taco Bell Lake.
Man, the Three Gorges Dam, a sight to behold and a wonder of the world until you find out that it has structural cracks all throughout it, and they're really scared that it might give way at any minute. But still, just wow. Wow, man, the smog really kills, like, the scenery of China. Like, you can't even really, like, appreciate it, but it's just, like, 2 miles out, and then the smog just makes it to where you hardly can even see.
That smog in China is just awful, man. I tell you what. And the smog, look at these things right here. Those are some rough-looking ships.
Dude, the smog is so bad you can hardly even see the dam from the side of the dam.
Damn, man. Damn, that's damn.
Damn! Damn! Oh my, dude. This looks like a Minecraft map with, like, minimum render on. Like, you can see to the other side, and then nothing exists beyond that.
Yeah, and also, by the way, I know dams aren't supposed to be like necessarily like design marvels or something like that, but this thing looks hideous. Like it looks so visually unpleasing. It's like it reminds me of an industrial hellhole, and I'm sure that's probably not what they were going for when they built it, even though it probably is. But it just looks so bad. Like, honestly, they didn't put any thought into making it look somewhat good. Like, at least the Hoover Dam in the United States generally looks somewhat decent or clean. This doesn't.
Dude, the commies always have a way of building dams that are, like, atrocious affronts to design. Like, when you come to America, man, you can find a lot of dams that look pretty nice. Like, for example, like, near to our home, a hometown, at least, not our home. You have the Jordan Dam, which, I can't get it. Let me go type that one in. The Jordan Dam, Alabama. Let me go show this one to y'all. This one doesn't look that bad. Here it is. Doesn't look that bad.
See, it looks generally clean, like, at least. And also the Hoover Dam, it looks good too. It's just like a big solid wall of concrete. So, I mean, we don't generally make stuff that looks like industrial hell holes, at least. So the Chinese really went for the wrong look.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's just go look at some of the dams here in Alabama, like the Wilson Dam. Let's go look at this. Look, see, there's even a waterfall near this dam, and then there's the dam itself.
It looks clean, like they pressure washed it freshly.
Yeah, freshly. Fresh is the word of the day. Freshly. And then when you go and look at our most impressive dams, like the Hoover Dam, that one really makes you go, damn. And here we go. Here it is. Hold up. Let me get the front
Now,
view.
look at that. That looks actually clean. Like, when you look at that, you say, oh, it actually looks like they put some cleanliness into it. Like, you could eat off the Hoover Dam.
I wouldn't recommend it, but
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it either.
I would say it is pretty clean. Why does no one take a picture of the front side of the dam anymore, damn it? Let's see.
Also, look at the water, by the way. The water's even better looking here, too.
Bro, look at that pressure-washed rock. You know, I hear that there's more and more of this every year.
Yeah, that's honestly, like, that's a lot of work.
Man, that's a lot of work. Honestly, it's a little concerning because that used to be the water line where the white began. Like, it's all the way down there now.
Are you sure it just doesn't fluctuate from time to time?
No. It's going down every year. They said that it might be dead pulling in 5 years, which means that there is so little water in the dam, it could start causing significant structural issues because the ground could be drying out at the base, and also there wouldn't be enough water to actually pass over the dam anymore at all, even if they wanted to. So a little bit concerning with that. Let me see if I can get y'all a recent picture of that. Let me see here. I want to see if I can get y'all one from 2024. Doesn't really look like a lot of people have been taking pictures from 2024 on. The water actually used to go up.
The Hoover Dam, like, for some reason when I saw that clock, it said Arizona time on the side of, like, the tower up there. It gives me, like, those, like, Cold War vibes, like, really strongly.
Yeah, it kind of does, doesn't it? Honestly, man, this thing gives me real FDR vibes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, look at that. Like, the Nevada time clock, like, that's just Cold War era stuff right there to me.
That simple font. The way that clock face has no numbers on it. It's very stylized.
What do they call that? Avant-garde, I think, or something like that. Some style like that was popular during that era.
I really like that style, actually. Like, I always found it to be drippy. But this is it's a bit of an issue. I wish I could show. Actually, you know, Lake Mead water level time lapse. Maybe I can get a time lapse for you to show this. Let's see here. So that's a time lapse of Lake Mead.
Interesting. Yeah, that's messing up right there.
Yeah, let me see if I can get another one for you. Dang, man. It's really hard to find pictures of it. There's videos of it out there.
Also, Art Deco. It's not avant-garde. That's different. So I had it wrong.
Oh, well, I mean, who's gonna knock you for that? I'm sure there's a lot of people who are gonna cuss you out for that one. Like,
what the hell's avant-garde then? Let me take a look at that. I'm curious. Oh, yeah, hell no. I got the wrong one mixed up here. Yeah, definitely Art Deco. This other one here is not quite it. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Here we go, Matthew. Back in the 80s, that was where the water level was. You see right there? Like, it was almost like right at the top of the dam. You see that?
Yeah.
So
honestly, the more this is drying up, it makes me wonder if Hot Dog Man lives out here because, you know, they're getting real thirsty, more thirsty than the Hot Dog Man's ever been.
Oh, man. Like, I got indirect fire. Like, oh, man. But that is how low it is now. It's getting exceedingly low. And I'm just dying, man, to find like a time lapse of this. Here's an okay time lapse of it. From like the late 80s to the present day, that's how much Lake Mead has receded, is that these areas towards the upper end of the reservoir up here, which used to actually be covered in water, now they're just completely dry. I wonder if I can get you a view of this from the ground. I should, yeah, here we go. So that's what it looks like now.
Huh, it's just a dry bone.
Yeah, it's just dry bone. I mean, it's receded so much. Just to let you know this, man, this is kind of an interesting and morbid fact, is that L.A., well, not L.A., what am I talking about? I'm just saying all kinds of stupid stuff tonight. Las Vegas, as you know, Matthew, was run by the mob, and sometimes they would do hits out here in Las Vegas, and they generally would go and take their hits onto a boat onto Lake Mead, and then drop them off in a oil barrel filled with concrete out there in Lake Mead, because no one would ever find them because the lake was so deep. Now, the lake has receded so much that they're finding these oil drums now with the dead people inside that used to be completely unreachable and never even known of until now.
I heard rumors that actually when they were building the dam, they used to like put them in the cement. I don't know if that's true or not, but I heard they used to go out there and toss a few in that got on the wrong side of everybody, so they would go out there and just take care of them.
Man, Las Vegas didn't even exist then.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, man, like the Hoover Dam was built in the 30s. Like Las Vegas is a mob town, like began in like the early 50s. Like
Hold on, let's see. When was Hoover Dam completed? 1936. When was Las Vegas founded? 1905. Okay, when was Las Vegas really built out?
the 50s.
The 50s, you say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that means the Hoover Dam was in 1936. That's when it opened. And then at 1950 was when it was really built out. But Las Vegas was founded in 1905 and it was being built over that entire span.
You know, I mean, like Las Vegas was founded in 1905, man, but the mob wasn't building casinos in Las Vegas in 1905.
Oh yeah, but the mob was already there because the entire place was founded like on mob ties. That was the whole joint was that. They went out here to the desert and said this would be a great place to build a city, and they started building it.
Well, let me go show you really quickly, man, what Las Vegas looked like in 1940, because there were no real casinos in Las Vegas. Let me go and get.
Well, you know, casinos wasn't the only game the mob was in. Like the casinos was the main attraction for Las Vegas, but there was other things that they were doing rather than that. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but they were into other ventures.
But man, I mean, like there. Let's see. Established combined Wild West 1940s. The population was 8,400 in 1940. But within 5 years, it more than doubled in size. And that was largely because of World War II and a whole bunch of things that they were doing out in that area in World War II. But let me go see, when did the mafia get involved in Las Vegas? Let's go find that, because that would be the 50s, just about. Here we go. In its heyday from 1950, let's see, by the 1940s, it made significant inroads with big casino construction progress. So it would have been about the 1940s. So still, the Hoover Dam was open well before the mob really even got involved at all in Las Vegas.
But they were, but Chris's mom was employed there like before all this casino stuff happened. By the way, because they were running brothels out there. No, I'm serious. Like they were actually running brothels out there before the casinos came around. That I see people saying in the chat. That was the other venture they were in. The prostitution wasn't the only one either. They also had some other ones, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. I'm honestly not an expert in Las Vegas history. I don't know much about it because it's never really fascinated me that much. But I do know about the mob ties to it.
But man, I mean, like a brothel in Las Vegas, that's like saying there's air in the sky. Like brothels were everywhere, really, at that time. Like literally everywhere. Like they were here in Alabama. I mean, like that, like in our hometown of Wetumpka. You know, so saying like there was a brothel there and therefore there was mob activity. Like mob activity then existed everywhere because there was brothels everywhere at the time.
Let's see. Did the mob dispose of bodies in the Hoover Dam? Let's see here. Look. Let's see here. It says, okay, there they are talking about the barrels at Lake Mead. They're talking about the barrels. I see that. It says that there is speculation that let's see, bodies may have been disposed there, but it's not really clear. So apparently it's a conspiracy theory. So there's no evidence of it. But there's definitely bodies in Lake Mead, though. There's bodies in barrels, like you were talking about, without a doubt. So it's iffy. It's iffy. But I heard some rumors that they were putting people in the dam and letting them get get that concrete on them.
Let me go show you this real quick, because I doubt it, me personally. So what we're saying, Matthew, is there was a possibility that the mob was slipping bodies into this giant construction ground, covered with hundreds of people, mind you, working nonstop under a federal-run project, and they would somehow climb down or up onto the base of the dam that was being built, drop a dead body onto it, and no one would bat an eye. Like, and then they would just bury it in the concrete. Like, that seems to me to be a little bit of a stretch. Maybe
Are you familiar with how the mob works, man? They just kind of did what they want during this time. Like, you know, they had ties to like politicians.
But man, they didn't have ties enough to just literally drop a dead body in the middle of an active work site filled with hundreds of people and then that go unnoticed. They would drop people off in like a landfill or go bury them off in like in the middle of a woods somewhere. Like the mob wouldn't go in the middle of a work site that was literally teeming with people 24/7 and then go and drop a body in the middle of all of them and then have it buried in concrete. You know, like I doubt it. Like, I would really
Who was
doubt that.
working on this thing, by the way? Like, I don't know who built this thing or anything, but, it wasn't a mob in construction?
Uh, Not this one, man. This is a FDR New Deal construction. Like, this wasn't like hey Vinny, you want to build a dam kind of a thing. This was FDR,
Yeah, but
like
FDR went out there, like, putting the bricks on the side of it or something like that, or his guys weren't. It was not like the government out here. Was the government building it, or is that what you're saying?
yeah, the government was building this. This was built by the Bureau of Reclamation.
Or like actually being constructed by them or just funded by them?
This was built by the federal government.
No, and that's news to me. Let's see here. Who built the Hoover Dam? Let's see. No, it was not. It was built by 6 different construction companies, which included Utah Construction, Morrison Knudsen, JF Shea, Pacific Bridge. No, there's a bunch of private companies involved in those. It was not the government.
But the thing here, really quickly, let me go get this. Hang on. Hold up. Like, hold up. It was a government works project. This is the famous one of FDR and the New Deal programs. So let me go get the info on it.
It says the operator is the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation right there on the right.
In the following years, the Bureau of Reclamation, known as the Reclamation Service at the time, also considered the Lower Colorado as the site for the dam. The Bureau of Reclamation is the one who started the project. Yes, there were contractors out there, but the mob didn't have a construction crew in Las Vegas. They had construction crews in places like New York City, where there was major population centers with a lot of construction going on. Why would they have a construction crew in a town that only had less than 8,000 people in it, in the middle of nowhere, in the hopes that one day the Bureau of Reclamation would approach them to build a mega dam?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I was just wondering. I was asking the question. I said, did the mob have people in this construction crew? But I was just curious. But I mean, the odds of the mob being out here in the middle of the desert just building something at random probably not very high. But I mean, they could have had a guy or two.
So the AI overview says, while there's no direct evidence of mob involvement in the construction of the Hoover Dam itself, organized crime played a significant role in the development of Las Vegas after the dam's completion. So the answer is most likely no. Like, and also the dumping of bodies. I think the bodies thing, man, like, I've heard that story before. I think it was the story that workers would fall in and they get buried in the concrete. But I listened to someone talk about that, and they said that's pretty much dubious or most likely untrue. People did die building the Hoover Dam, but nobody would have been buried in the concrete because the concrete was laid pretty slowly. Like, it wasn't like so fast that someone could just get buried and no one would notice. Like, if you fell and died, they'd probably pull you out, before, you get buried in concrete. Because another thing that you have to remember is that if you lay a body in a concrete structure, that body is going to decompose and fall apart over time, and that's going to create a massive fissure in the concrete. So, like, no one would be sitting there and going, let's just bury that body in the concrete, because it's going to cause massive structural issues very quickly, just a little bit later down the line. So, most people would probably, say, pull that thing out. So there's probably nobody buried in the Hoover Dam, because it would cause structural issues.
Not. I hope they weren't buried in there. But real quick, before we get overtime, what's in the Hoover Dam Cafe? I'm curious. Is everything on the left?
Honestly, that's a good question. Oh, dang, that thing's pretty nice.
Oh, my God. That's nice. They have a huge Snickers bar up top. Did you see that?
Where? Oh, my Lord.
On the right. Look at that.
Bro, why did the camera pan?
That's an ice cream bar. Yeah, really? How to do that?
Oh, shoot. Wait a minute. It's a 360.
Look at that.
Bro.
Oh, look, it's like looking over the whole thing. Wow, this is nice. This is a nice cafe.
Bro, and they got fruity bars.
But
anyways, moving on from that, this is pretty cool. What did they have on the menu? Dude, they had like a pretty good looking hamburger.
That does look good right there. When the cheese looks melted like that, just like that, then it's about to be a busting burger.
Honestly, man, this burger, it has so much meat on it that honestly, it looks like you'll have to pay for it in monthly installments.
Yeah, call in Klarna because we're buying a Five Guys.
Do you have financing options for this hamburger? It's like, man, honestly sad. But this is pretty cool. Maybe one day what is this, a Sloppy Joe? That kind of looks like a Sloppy Joe, a little bit. Maybe. Possibly. I'm not sure. I don't really know. Anyways,
That
it's
looks like, honestly, that looked like a chili burger or something, but I'm not really familiar with it. Honestly, when I took a first glance, I was like, is that a Saturn burger?
man, what is this? This is Saturn burger. But man, the dog who owned the dam. Wow. That dog was making big money moves. Now that is the mob ties right there. That dog was working for the capos back in back in New York. Like, man,
Muggsy was involved, well, let me take it back. Was not involved in the area. Bugsy Siegel was here. I think he had contact with some people that were working around this area, but once again, there's no proof of it necessarily. But he was one of the first ones in this area, scouting the place.
I think that would be like in the early 50s, though, right? Like,
I think that'd been before then because he was hanging around during the construction of the dam. Like if you pull it up, I think that's the case.
And his name is what? Bugsy
Siegel. Yes,
how do you
Siegel. And you know how that's about Bugsy. No, not Busey. No, we're not talking about butter sausage, man. It's Bugsy.
Okay, all right, Bugsy and Siegel, like that.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, look at this.
Let's look at him.
A wise guy. Like it's a wise guy here. But let's see here. Let's see. Early life, the Bugs in the Meyer mob. The Bugs and Meyer mob. That honestly doesn't sound like a mob. That sounds like a furniture company. Bugs and Meyer Furniture Company.
It was definitely a mob that him and Meyer Lansky was two bad ones.
Well, they weren't moving furniture, but they were moving something. Like that is for sure. Oh. Huh.
Yeah. That was bad ones.
And that was only in his teenage years. That young man he was going places and they were not good. That was for sure. But let's see here. Murder Incorporated. I don't know.
Oh, they really incorporated that? I thought that wasn't allowed.
Well, for legal reasons, they had to make an incorporation so that way, it was, for legal reasons. Anyways, let's see. Selling adamite.
Las Vegas, there it is. Las Vegas, down there at the bottom.
He sold adamite to Mussolini?
Wait a minute, what? What the hell is adamite?
So it was a new type of explosive substance that detonated without sound or flash. So pretty much C4.
Wait a minute. What? Wait a minute. Hold on. Am I reading this right? I said Mussolini advanced 40,000 to have it scaled up, but Siegel failed to detonate the explosive during a demonstration to Joseph Goebbels, Hermann Goering. What the hell? Mussolini demanded a refund. Man, what the hell kind of alternative timeline is this? Am I reading this right?
Bro, he tried to shake down Mussolini, and Mussolini asked for a refund. What a clown!
Refund out here, bro. Like it was like Lowe's or something.
Mussolini said, "Listen, I know that there's like a no refund policy, but this doesn't work, and I think that I should be able to refund for this." Dude, that is so stupid. Like, anyways, moving on. Let's see. Problems with the outfit's wire service had cleared up in Nevada and Arizona, but in California, Siegel refused to report business. He later announced to his colleagues that he was running the California syndicate by himself, that he returned the loans in his own good time. The mob bosses were patient with him because he had proven to be a valuable man.
Wait. See, it says in the 1930s, Siegel had traveled to southern Nevada to expand the operations there. They was traveling around. In the mid-1940s, Siegel was operating in Las Vegas. So before the 1940s, like I said, he was scouting around in Las Vegas while they were still building the dam. Like, he was doing that.
But scouting around doesn't mean, like, heavy mob activity where they're dropping off bodies. Like, he's trying to see if there's any business opportunities to be had out there. He's not out there, like, capping folks. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, maybe not. Although these guys seem to have sort of did that on the regular, so I'm sure he was doing it somewhere.
Man, he was sitting there, like, bro, that's the face he gave when, like, the 90th person was saying, "Please spare me, I don't want to die." He was sitting there giving him that mobster stare, that fluoride stare. Like, he's going,
this dude right here looks tired of it at this point. Like, man, do I have to do this again? It's like, what the hell? This dude really does have the psychopath look. Like, that is the look right there. Those dead eyes like that, that you ought to be really scared of a person that looks like that.
Let's see. Lansky handed over operations to Siegel. In the mid-1940s, he was operating in Las Vegas while his lieutenants worked on a business policy to secure all gambling in Los Angeles. Oh, okay. In 1946, he decided that the agreement with Wilkerson had to be altered to give him control of the Flamingo. Let's see. Let's see. He believed that those attractions would lure thousands of vacationers while gamble as well as high rollers. Let's see. All stakes were fleeing under the threat of death, and he went into hiding in Paris for a time. Okay. Let's see. Maniacal chest puffing. Oh, okay.
Maniacal chest puffing. That's Siegel's doings. What the hell?
No, he was into some freaky shit. Let's see. Let's see. So yeah, it appears that the mob connections in Las Vegas came from some maniacal chest pumping somewhere in the mid 40s.
Wait, it says here Siegel's attorney Wiener.
What? Where?
Siegel's attorney Wiener described him as very well liked and said he was good to people. That line right there could go down in the comedy books.
Where is that? Where is that on this page? Where is it?
The last line under the heading of Flamingo Hotel.
Let's see.
And the last line.
Lou Wiener.
No.
What a name. What a name. Described it as very well liked. It said he was good to people. Coming from the guy whose literal last name is a euphemism for dick. It's like, honestly, I don't know where they're finding these people, man. He goes and tries to sell C4 to Mussolini and it doesn't even blow up, and then he has an attorney named Wiener. Honestly, man, the comedy writes itself with this one.
I tell you.
Let's see. Oh, and then apparently he just died promptly afterward. Let's see. Oh, yeah, he got killed in 1947. So right after he started up the whole Las Vegas thing, he got killed. So, okay, well, anyways, what an interesting...
They used him as leg work, and then they wanted the whole cut, so they got rid of him.
Apparently so. So they actually did call it Murder, Inc.
Oh, it was actually Murder, Inc.? I'm assuming it was not actually incorporated.
I'm assuming that it probably wasn't. I don't believe the U.S. would allow for this to be incorporated. But yeah, it was actually a crime group called Murder Incorporated. Didn't know that one. That's new. Also, why is this guy called Kid Twist?
Bro, it looks kind of a little bit different. I'm not gonna say any more.
I'm the predecessor to Weinstein. And then we also have Dewey, who created the Dewey. Who that?
Whoa, bro! Whoa.
Bro, what is up with his nose?
Politician. Oh, this is the 47th governor of New York right here.
Let's see. First became, he was a prosecutor of Murder, Inc. Okay, all right. All right. I'm not going to lie. The guy's facial structure is a little odd. Why does his nose look like a thumb?
He looks like the Alibaba version of Walt Disney or something.
You know what he looks like, man? He looks like the Alibaba version of Howard Hughes, when he was alive during this time. Actually, no, Howard Hughes didn't really look like him. Who the hell am I thinking of? It's not Walt Disney. No, wait a minute. No, I know who it is. I know who it is. The Andy Griffith Show. You know who I'm about to go find here. Let me go get the Andy Griffith Show here real quick. Let's see. You know the supporting actor, the insurance guy who later went on to be a paper pusher in the show? You know who I'm talking about, right?
No, I have no clue.
I'll be dipped, man. I gotta go, let's see. Andy Griffith cast. Let me go find the cast. Because once you get the reference, you'll see. Where in the hell is this? Oh my God, they had
Is it Floyd Larson, the barber?
Two chairs. Let's see. I be dipped. Where in the world is this guy? No way. Come on. He's got to be here somewhere. He's got to be in here somewhere. Come on. Are you freaking kidding me? It wasn't that guy. What the hell? Wait, hold up. Okay, well, I guess we won't be able to find him. Whatever. Howard. Andy Griffith. Howard. This guy right here.
Oh, you're talking about that guy. I remember him now. Yeah, the mini-me version of him or something.
Yeah. All of his facial features shrunken down by half, but he's Howard from the Andy Griffith Show. That's exactly who I was thinking of. Thank you, Gregory C, because you put that in the live chat, and I just saw that. But anyways, with that, we finally found it, and it's time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to E. Johnson once again, who puts in a 20, and thank you very much, E. Johnson, for that support. He said, I know why the LSA is called the LSA, but why is the enforcer called the enforcer? And who would name their kid Enforcer Matt? Oh my, how dare you?
Oh, man, I'm telling you.
I thought you was a nice guy, but really you're just a fan. I won't go there. Look, I'm not going to go there for the sake of a joke. But thank you very much, E. Johnson, for the support. And why would they name their kid Enforcer Matt? I don't know. But there is a cult of Matt. Why would they name their cult after Matt? I don't know. But Enforcer, tell us more.
I have to thank you for the support, and that's an interesting question. Why in the world am I named Enforcer? And that is a very interesting question, and one that stems back to the very root of something that I was good at. In 2016, a game was released called Verdun, and let me go show you that. This game. This was the game that was released. This seems to have no relation to what I'm talking about right now, but I was an absolute fan of this game when it came out. I played it to death. And when I was on Steam, which is where the name is from, my original name, my account name, was my actual name, and that's a bit of an issue. So eventually I had to change it, and I was like, what am I going to change it to? And in this game, there were two people that were great, at least at that time, and I'm not even kidding. It was me and this other guy called Zab. I didn't really personally know Zab, but he was a murder machine. He would kill me every time I ran into him. So I was great. I would rack up hundreds of kills in actual populated servers that didn't have bots, and that guy would as well. So I was like, dang, man, I'm out here just leveling folks. I was like, you know what? I need to change my Steam name to kind of get the idea across to these folks that I'm going to be enforcing some wins on my end here. So I came up with the Enforcer, and that was the name that I had on Steam. So originally this channel started off called Think Tank, and that name was pretty crappy. Like, that was honestly low effort. So I changed it because the channel went from being a news channel to a gaming channel and then back to a news channel. So I changed the news channel's name when it turned into a gaming channel into my in-game name on Steam, which was the Enforcer, and thus the name stuck. And so when the Enforcer channel, which was a gaming channel, went back to news, which was when the Ukraine war started, I never changed the name. I just kept the Enforcer. And that's where the name is from. So in a sense, this game that honestly is dead at this point, called Verdun, had a very big role to play in what this channel is actually called, because I named it Enforcer because I was trying to, like, in my mind at the time, strike fear in people when they saw the Enforcer enter one of these lobbies, because I was going to be wiping people out. So that was the idea at the time, and then the Enforcer name stuck for this channel. But nowadays it really means nothing. Like people always ask me, you're the Enforcer? Well, what do you enforce? It's like nothing. It's like it was just a name that was a gaming channel name, and then it stayed. So I hope that addresses that well. Very interesting kind of a question there. But this is, and also, by the way, while my esophagus like collapsed right there for a second. Also, by the way, you were the first person to ever hear the full story of where the Enforcer name came from, because I've never actually told anyone why I changed my gaming name to that and why that was ever the case, but it was because of that reason. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Butchie777, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Butchie, as well, for that support. And we appreciate that. And Butchie said, for the succulent Chinese meal fund, and still love how you tell the news with a hint of humor, and also straight to the point. Please take a live chat in LSA.
And thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you so much for enjoying that we still report the news with a hint of humor. We just have to point out things that are hilarious sometimes, like that one guy down in Al Hadida yelling about George Bush, although he hasn't been the president for like decades. He's stuck on a phase. He's never gotten out of it. We have to include humor like that because it's hilarious, honestly. And I'm glad to know that you enjoy it, and I'm glad to know that you enjoy our news coverage really as a whole and the analysis of it too. And so with that, a huge thanks to you once again for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. And also, I saw some people say, man, when Enforcer was going to enforce some ponage in Verdun. Well, yeah, actually, Verdun is the first of a series of games. There was actually 3 games that came out afterwards. All of them are practically dead at this point. But the first one was called Verdun, which was on the Western Front in Europe in World War I. The second game that came out was called Tannenberg, which was based on the Eastern Front of World War I between the Russians, the Germans, and the Austro-Hungarians. Then there was a third game that came out, which in my opinion was actually one of my favorite, although it kind of died really quickly. It was called Asanzo, which was a World War I game, much like Verdun and Tannenberg, but it was based in the Italian Alps. It was a very unique game. I thought that the play style of the game, the graphics of the game, it was all beautiful. But sadly, it didn't really last that long. Considering that games like that are multiplayer, and you really have to have a multiplayer crowd to play it, unless you want to play a server populated with bots. There really was no amount of people left after like the first 6 months of the game. So sadly, that one kind of died. But it was a really cool game series. I love the game series. I still love it to this day. It was just so much fun. And I really liked how historical it was and how true it was to its form. Instead of being like, a Battlefield game where everything's like a modern FPS shooter, that one actually really took its time to really make you feel like you were actually playing a game that was actually based in World War I. So really cool games there. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the live chat question in honor of Butchie goes to David Tablet, who says, is there any word on how the Houthis are responding to the attacks by the United States?
They're apparently bunkering down and just kind of hiding at this point. We haven't really heard about them doing much beyond an initial attack against a carrier group, which was easily stopped or really shot down. We haven't really heard a lot about them since. So we think at this point they're kind of bunkering down and just trying to survive the airstrikes and hopefully see that the United States' will to continue to bomb them lasts shorter than their will to keep on going or keep on hiding for the large part. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running and sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Alexandre Potvin, who puts in a $12 donation. And thank you, actually 14, excuse me. And thank you very much, Alexandre, for that support. And he said, USA always ends up doing what is just and good, but only after trying everything else, said Winston Churchill.
It kind of ends up to be the case sometimes with that. Hopefully we'll do the right thing eventually in the situation with Ukraine. I think that we're doing the right thing certainly in the Middle East right now. Really, no one can even ask a question about that. But with Eastern Europe, I would say that we should be doing a lot more. But Winston Churchill is a statement largely aged fairly well on that, at least in this particular topic. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to none other than, guess who? Dean Hugh, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Dean, for that support. He said, may I use your intro soundtrack music in my YouTube videos for motorcycle riding? I'll credit you and your channel, or do you require royalty contract from me? Also, by the way, Dean, let me know what motorcycle you're riding, because I used to ride motorcycles myself until I quit doing it a couple of years back because I had to sell it. But Enforcer, what say you?
Thank you for the support. Sadly, though, I don't believe that we would be able to allow you to use the intro music. I thank you very much, though, for asking. But it was really expensive to make. Generally, each minute of music cost us, at least initially, a little over $1,000. It was about $1,200 for a minute of music each. So we generally want that to be Enforcer exclusive. We're totally fine with people listening to it, but we really wouldn't like if people started to use that for other purposes, because we put so much money into it. We really want it to be kind of an Enforcer exclusive thing. But I do thank you so much for the support, and I thank you for really enjoying that music. And I hope that you get a good long amount of enjoyment out of listening to it, because we absolutely loved making the music. It was incredibly fun, and we love to know that people really do enjoy it. But still, with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Timothy Lardy, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Timothy, for that support. He said, let's see, F-47 Cyclone, Europe, is said to be starting a Sky Shield with Eurofighters and F-35s. Do you support this work-off? Is Putin bootlicker? What do you think?
I don't really know how to decipher that message. Could you break it down for me, Matthew?
I think he was commenting about the F-47 at first. I'm really not, I think it might have gotten broken up, but he was saying something about the F-47. But he asked the question, do you think that, I think he meant to say, what the hell's that guy's name? The guy who's the envoy for Russia right now?
Witkoff?
Yeah, Witkoff. He was trying to say, do you support Witkoff's position on Putin?
I really don't think Witkoff is competent enough in it being the chief diplomat to actually support him on anything, because I don't really think he has an understanding of what he's working with here. And I'm not saying that because he seems to be sympathetic to the Russians. I'm saying that because he seems to not really know anything. Like, he doesn't even know the regions in Ukraine that are being contested by the Russians or the Ukrainians. He doesn't even know their names. So if he doesn't even know the names, he doesn't even know the geographical parameters, he doesn't know the resources, the territory, the people that are there, what else may be involved, the strategic implications of that. He doesn't really know a lot to be the chief negotiator. So beyond his positions, just for the fact of his competency as a chief negotiator, I would say that he's certainly not fit to be it. It needs to be someone else that actually understands the situation and is fairly grounded in what the odds or well, what the stakes are that are at play here. Because having someone like that negotiating, it's pretty much like sending a unknowing schmuck out there to negotiate for us. And I think the United States should be better represented at the negotiating table than what we're currently seeing. So I would say that I'm not really that big of a fan of Witkoff. And also another thing I'd say is, as far as the Sky Shield, anything that would protect Europe from the skies is a incredibly good thing. So I'd say I'm for it. With F-35s and Eurofighters, that would be an incredibly good move in itself. But I hope that does address both parts of that question well. And I got to thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Critical Mass X Amerifani LSA Forever. A hell of a name. Who puts in a $10 donation? And thank you very much for that support, by the way. Critical Mass X Amerifani LSA Forever. They said F-47 should be called the Spectre because it's going to haunt the dreams of friend and foe.
Friend and foe.
Yeah,
Goodness.
really.
Like, oh goodness, that's scary there. Also, I like how this is just a computer rendering.
Yeah, also, by the way, how come we can't see a real picture of it? Because it's not like, it's not like it's going to give away some top secret abilities or something. It's like, why don't we see a real picture of it? It's actually flying right now.
Yeah, that's something I was kind of like, that's a little lame. It's like, why can't we see a real picture of this thing? It's like, if it's being unveiled, it's like, what? Are they saying that, like, it's still in such a prototypical phase, even though it's been flying for 5 years, it's still not even presentable enough to have a picture taken of it? It's like, I find that hard to believe. Like, they should have put a real picture out of the thing, like they did with the B-21 Raider. Like, they actually showed the B-21 Raider, like, a real one, and it was really cool. And this is a rough rendering, honestly. Like, look at it.
Yeah, it doesn't show anything really. It's like when they told the guy who makes the rendering, we want to show people what it generally looks like. Did they tell him to only show the snout? It's like show like a side angle or something. You can see more of the backdrop and the smoke than you can the plane.
Man, what's funny though, man, is just like, man, when you design this plane in the rendering, we want the dihedral on the wings to be like plus 20%. Like, meaning like the wings are like almost like facing up. It's like, what is up with these wings, dude? They're not like level. They're almost like pointed upwards at an extreme angle.
Yeah, and also these are not what the hangars at Area 51 look like, by the way. Totally inaccurate.
Yeah, usually they have like glorp glob hanging from the walls up there. like they don't have an American flag up there, I can tell you that. Especially since the globalists run Area 51, and many people ought to know that as a rule. They actually have George Soros up there. I'm just kidding. I'm just playing. Someone's about to go mental on us here in a second. I'm just playing. It's too late. They're already going to go mental. I know it. But anyways, I was trying to look for Area 51 out here really quick. Oh, no. Hold up.
Homie.
It's Homie.
Yeah, that's what it's called. Its code is called Homie. The airport code. It's near Rachel.
Oh, there we go. There it is. Here it is. There it is. Groom Lake. They named it that because they groom a lot here. But let's see here. Not that way. Not that way. Like, not that kind. But man, look at that. All of those government contracted vehicles, cement mixers by the dozen. Those little things that you rent. I forgot what
it's kind of weird how they have so much construction equipment for something that has no new construction above ground.
It really is interesting with that. I think the State Deep is trying to hide something here from us. And what could they be trying to hide?
Deep, eh?
They think deep indeed, I suppose. Let's see. Oh, look, there's the Janet Airlines planes. Pretty cool.
You know how many times I've landed those there on Flight Simulator? A lot.
So many times. An unbelievable.
I usually get so boring flying the plane out here, to be honest with you. I usually like go berserk over there on that sand pit. Not the sand pit, the dry lake bed. I usually go berserk and like start crashing it and everything because I get bored.
Dang, man. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dry lake bed for a reason. Use it.
Oh, look, they have F-16s based out of Area 51.
Yeah, I think those are like the, not necessarily the patrols, but I think they're like rapid response aircraft or something, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. I think that would be the case. Also, you can see these look like storage sheds, maybe. And then you have this little tarp. It's a tent.
What's funny about this is it's technically a U.S. Air Force installation. It's part of Nellis. But in reality, though, it's really not even operated by the military at all. They have private contractors for security, and that's what you'll usually see driving the Raptors around the perimeter of the place. Because the contractors, like the defense contractors, are actually the ones that actually work out of here. So Lockheed and all these companies, they'll actually work out of this base and also have employees here as well. So it's not just military here. The Air Force technically controls it, but in reality, they're just basically maintaining the facility, and that's about it.
Also, are these nuclear test craters out here?
Oh, yeah, they did nuclear tests out here at the Tonopah Range, I think, at one point.
I was trying to see if this is the Tonopah Range.
There's the Pluto test bunker.
I'm assuming this is the Tonopah test range. Interesting. I'd actually like to see these craters. I'm sure they're sizable. Cool. I wonder if we can see them. Nope. What about the Apple II house? Oh, that's those houses in those nuclear tests.
Yeah, look at that.
Look at that. What do you know? What a treat to see this thing in the flesh. How neat. What about
honestly, if a nuclear war ever broke out, I'd love to go live in that.
Man, honestly, man, that'd probably be pretty nice to live in, you know? Like, honestly, probably cheaper than most other places. They also brought a turret here, for reasons to test. Looks like it's still there. And also, what else? The Sedan crater. That's a crater.
It looks like a Nissan Altima.
Oh, whoa, it really does. See, get it? He made a car joke. But there's all the red craters of the nuclear bombs that were tested here. Pretty cool. And I got to tell you that Sedan crater, that thing goes deep, real deep, long-lasting deep. But anyways,
yeah, that's where they went to. I think this is where they went to go film the Oppenheimer scenes where they like pretended to blow up a nuke. This is where they went, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, actually. I didn't know that. I'm sure everyone enjoyed their light dose of radiation from the area. I'm just kidding. There's no radiation there anymore, or is there? But anyways, with that, I hope that addresses that well. Thank you once again for support and help with this channel. Keep it running, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Khan LSA, who puts in a 10. And thank you, Khan, as well, for that $10 support. They said, we have Russians. I can't read this one, Con. It gets too political. And also, I can't comment on whether or not I agree with it. It gets too political. But thank you very much, Con, for that support, and we appreciate it. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you for the support. Wow, I can't read that one. That one, whoa. But still, thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to DJ, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, DJ, for that support. He said, you're not fight Houthis. You're fighting whole Middle East. The Taliban, all the other groups, it's all same. The ground game will need to be the whole Middle East, even Saudi, or it will just be another Iraq type of result.
No. Like, thank you for the support, but no. Why would we fight the Saudis when the Saudis are blowing up the Houthis just the same? Like, that makes, like, if the Saudis supported the Houthis, why are they killing the Houthis? That doesn't really make much sense. We can deal with the situation just by dealing with Iran. That I can pretty promise you. And so with that, I thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Sailor Wolf, who puts in a 10, along with Esteban Graves, who also puts in a $10 donation. And thank you both very much for that support and helping to keep the channel running. Sadly, no comment to address on either one, but we do appreciate that very much. And we also have a 10 from R.A. That Girl Chicago, who makes a return once again and puts in a 10 as well. And thank you very much, R.A. That Girl Chicago, for the support. They said this is tough to say, but we need to step back from these negotiations and to let the Europeans handle this, because we, America, are not equipped to deal with this. And shaking my head, bad taste in the mouth right now.
And thank you for the support. I largely agree, really, for the fact that the European, well, if we want to say that this is a European affair and this is their problem because it's in Europe and it's not America's problem, shouldn't they be the one leading the negotiations then with Russia? Because, you know, it's their war after all, according to us. That, you know, that would make a lot of sense. But still, I thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep it running. And I have to say that's an interesting take I'd sort of agree with, and largely agree with, actually. And still, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to E. Johnson. Once again, he puts in another 10. And thank you very much, E. Johnson, for the support. The second one, he said, I'm here for the free tacos.
Hey, and we always love free tacos. Tacos are great. I love them. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we have a 10 from Ari, that girl Chicago, once again, the second super chat, and puts in a 10. And thank you once again, Ari, that girl Chicago, for the support. I said, does Russia still have those 150,000 troops stationed over in that area near Poland? And I forgot the name, but it ends in grad.
Kaliningrad? Yes, they do. They still have them there. And it's actually a larger number than that. It's nearly 400,000 of them in Kaliningrad right now. So the answer to that is yes. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that addressed that well. We are on to the next one.
And we got one from Peter Florence, who puts in a 5. He says, smack the crap out of that like button.
And smack the ever-living hell out of the like button. It's gotten up to 3.7 thousand likes. Ole mole! Really crazy stuff right there. And I got to thank you all once again for hitting it. And I got to thank you once again for support and encouraging people to hit that like button. So with that, thank you once again. Hope that addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Shannon Newman, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Shannon Newman, for that $5 support, and we appreciate it very much. They said misinformation and disinformation with the propaganda is the way of the CCP.
And that is absolutely correct. The CCP attempts to mislead and then deceive people. It's a very sad thing. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Rai SR, who puts in a $5 donation as well. Thank you very much, Rai SR, for that $5 support. We do appreciate it very much. He said, did anyone else notice that on the Zala drone video, the screen said Putin is a PDF file?
I didn't notice that, but maybe we'll go back and look at that at some time. But still, thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep running. And that is a very interesting take. Probably a true one, though. But still, thank you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Man, it said Russia.pdf. But anyways, going into our next one here, this one goes to Ryan Guy SR once again, who puts in another 5. And thank you very much, Ryan Guy, for the support. He said, y'all should do a 5-minute intermission at this point in the show daily, regardless of speech. We all need snacks and a break as well. LSA.
Thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and that would be a great idea. The problem is that we just go to black on the screen. A lot of people are going to leave because they're going to think the show's over, and we don't want people to think the show's over, so we would rather torture ourselves and make sure the show keeps running, hell in or high water, and that there's something going on rather than nothing. But still, thank you for the suggestion. It's a very kind one, I'd say, but sadly, our boss, YouTube, doesn't allow us such things. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Philip Fixes LSA, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Philip, for that support as well. He said F-47 Wasp, and it's a swarm. So 7th generation fighters will be AI controlled with a remote supervisor approving engagements. And Slav LSA.
And long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die. And that's also interesting here. I thank you for sharing that information, and I thank you greatly for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running as well. And so with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Halligan218, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Halligan, as well, for that support. They said, I came here tonight for the train content, and the news is a nice bonus. And great stream as usual tonight in LSA.
Hey, thank you for the support. You came for the train content, baby. I gotta thank you so much for that. Thank you greatly, because I'm glad to hear that you're here for the train content. We haven't had any tonight. Not a lick, not a piece of it, not a single little smidging of it. But I thank you so much for being here for the train content, nonetheless, because I thought I would show y'all something. A little something, a little itty bitty something. And let me go get it. Yes, here we have it. We have it here, Matthew. We have it here. And oh, yes, we do. I'd agree entirely, Matthew. I have to show you this, though. This is the Mercury.
Oh.
You cut out.
Oh.
It's a streamlined passenger express train.
Oh.
It also had this one.
Oh.
They're streamlined. Pretty cool. Aw, man. But I just thought I'd show y'all that streamlined trains are cool. That's pretty much the whole gist of it. But beyond that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Andrew, for that support as well. And we appreciate it. He said, in my opinion, the true measure of patriotism is being able to acknowledge the faults and flaws of a system and continually strive to improve it. And LSA all the way. And
Hey!
amen, Andrew. Yes, indeed. If people were too scared to say, hey, this needs to be fixed or that needs to be fixed because they feel like they're going to get some reprisals against them, that doesn't sound like democracy. That sounds like authoritarianism. But that's just my opinion, and it sounds like it's yours too. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would agree. It's my opinion as well, Andrew Honeycutt. And I thank you for the support, and I thank you for recognizing that because we had someone tell us that we were anti-American last night over the Twitter DMs. Anti-American, would you believe that? Like I went and spent nearly 10 grand to make American patriotic songs at my own expense with no profit incentive at all, to make American music more patriotic than it already was because I'm an anti-American, apparently. That kind of stuff is crazy right there. Because we said that, naming an aircraft a certain kind of a number was a little bit self-serving and kind of narcissistic, because it's never been done like that before. But, it is what it is. But I know, Andrew Honeycutt, that I'm a patriot because I care and love the United States of America very deeply. So with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Clyde. And thank you very much, Clyde, for that support. He said, what is your opinion on the U.S. idea of building a golden dome capable of defending the entire U.S.?
It's a waste of tax money. An air defense system for the United States is pointless because if a missile has made it to the United States, it's an intercontinental ballistic missile. That is it. There really would be no other major air defense threats that would ever affect the United States unless if they were cruise missiles fired in very limited numbers by submarines off of the coast by either the Chinese or the Russians, and those would most likely be targeting major population centers because they are an industrial base, and that means that those could easily be defended by point-based air defense systems like a Patriot or a THAAD. So for that reason, I'd say it's a general waste of tax money to have an air defense system that's going to cover literally every square mile of the United States from smaller missile threats, because there are really no small missile threats that would ever affect the continental United States. That money could be much better spent on the U.S. Navy, in my opinion, which is really the first line of defense for the nation, considering that all of our threats come from across the seas. So I would think that money would be far better spent on the Navy instead of a pointless air defense system, in my opinion. So with that, I hope that does address that, at least in my opinion. But once again, that's my opinion, and some people believe that the weapon system has a purpose. I personally don't really see it. But still, with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And we have a first ever super chat from David Locke. And thank you very much, David, for choosing to support the channel. And we do appreciate that very much. And of course, it's that support that keeps us running. And thank you for choosing to support the channel. He said, thank you for keeping us up to date.
And thank you so much for the support, David Locke. Your first super chat ever. And thank you so much for enjoying the news and enjoying us keeping you all up to date. It is an honor for us to do so. And with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Jason Carney. And thank you, Jason, as well, for that support. He said the LSA should create a game.
What kind of a game, Jason Carney? I'm interested. I don't know what kind of game the LSA would make, but it would be an interesting one. I think I would probably make something similar to Hearts of Iron 4 or something along those lines. Maybe Victoria 3. That would be an interesting kind of a game to me. I like those, personally. But still, thank you once again for support, Jason Carney. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Blazoth and also Mark Calley for each putting in a $3 and $1 donation. And thank you very much, Blazoth and Mark, for that support. And we appreciate it very much. We also have a 2 from DJ, once again, who said Russians are in fear of Putin, and that's all.
And I would agree. I think the Russians are in fear of Putin, possibly, but they also get a heavy dose of propaganda as well. And so with that, thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 2 from Zach Logan. He said, anyone want a crusade? What is this guy's deal with crusading, by the way? He said that last night, too.
I thank you for the support. I'm going to be honest. I'm just going to be completely frank. I'm totally against crusades or religious wars. The United States of America is a religious country. I'm a Christian, but the government is never supposed to recognize any kind of a religion. For that reason, the United States declaring a Christian crusade would be a violation of the First Amendment and the separation of church and state. And I think that would be a large affront to the way the United States of America is supposed to operate. Now, that would generally be my actual opinion on that. I'm not really one for that. If the United States conducts anything, it should be within our strategic interests as a whole and not focused on some sort of a religious pursuit, because that would seem to be, honestly, against the grain of how America's operated for 249 years. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And it is now time to jump into our live chat questions proper. And once again, thank you all for supporting the channel once again, and we do appreciate it very much. But we are now jumping into our first live chat question, which is the Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, Royal Fluffness, Ariel Garbo, Johnny Dog, and Norm Pritchett. They said tonight's Morse code decipher says the Houthis do be hurting for money as bad as I don't know what the hell you got me saying, man. I'm not repeating that. Holy moly, LTLC.
And that's the sound of money. I thought Matthew might read it, but he didn't. But you got the dent on the nail. That was the Morse code message tonight. I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct time and time again, because y'all continue to do that so many times, and it's always impressive, even on the 1,123rd day of the war. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, it's time for us to get on into some live chats. And live chats we shall. And of course, I do have to say this really quickly. We are under a emergency regimen here on the channel. We have not been able to tell you all this, but we have an emergency. We have dogs, and we have to take care of them. And so for that reason, we have to get up a little bit early in the morning. So we're going to try and cut this thing down to be a little bit short. So we're going to be answering 3 live chat questions, and then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Ryan, who says, if World War III breaks out and the power grid goes down, can you guys start holding live crowds where we all get together for the daily news?
Yeah, I'm going to become a town crier. I can stand in the middle of Birmingham and go, hear ye, the news from the world. I could do that. Yeah, we could. It's just that y'all all have to come to Birmingham for that one. And I'd also probably have to risk getting shot in the streets of Birmingham, because to be honest with y'all, downtown Birmingham is more dangerous than the front lines of Ukraine. I'm just kidding with that, by the way. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Fayuma, who says, are there any plans to defeat the Russian Shadow Fleet at sea by the EU, Canada, or the United States?
It seems that the Europeans have now taken it upon themselves to seize these vessels and impound them indefinitely as a response to it. I don't know what the U.S. would ever do as a response. I think we probably will not be responding for now, but the Europeans are just going to seize the vessels from this point forward if they can confirm without a shadow of a doubt that they are a Shadow Fleet vessel. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to Fayuma, who says, my question is, Germany is now thinking of a refusal to continue the use of F-35 for its military in the future. And what do you say?
I would say that that's really an internal German issue. If the Germans believe that they really don't want the F-35 for security reasons, it's largely their prerogative to make. As an American, I really feel like getting involved in domestic affairs of other countries is largely distasteful. I don't like seeing other Americans doing it, and I personally wouldn't want to do that either. If they believe that it was a security concern, then it is what it is. I would like for them to not, because those weapon sales do make the United States a good bit of money, but at the same time, they need to pursue what they would believe is the best for the national security of Germany. And whatever their decision is on that, we largely have to respect that, because they are largely beholden to their own voters and electors, much like we are here in the United States. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we've reached the end of tonight's stream. And I gotta say, what a stream it has been. Nearly 90,000 people have watched this stream before it ended. It's actually exactly 86,000 right now, and we still have about 6,000 people here with us right now, which is honestly pretty shocking considering that's almost 3 hours and 30 minutes in. I have to thank all of y'all so much once again for watching tonight. If y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure to, well, actually, don't support us on Patreon. That's for the short war videos, but, if you want to support us on Patreon, you can. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. It's just that I'm not going to plug it here on the stream. But if y'all have enjoyed, thank you all so much once again for watching. We hope to see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time as we cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And not only that, celebrate the 3rd anniversary of the founding of the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, we'll see you all tomorrow night on the Sunday night fundraiser stream on LSA Day. And once again, be sure to join us for that. And hopefully it'll be a big fundraiser to celebrate the christening of the day. But with that, of course, thank you all for watching, and all 90,000 people that were here tonight, which is an insane amount of viewership tonight. And we hope to see you all, like I said, tomorrow. But with that, Slava Ukraine, Heroem Slava, get some rest, and good night.